Good evening. We are returning to public session. This is the North Andover School Committee for Thursday, May 9th, 2024. We are back in regular session. I have 7:08 p.m. Apologize for the late. We had a little bit of an extended executive session. So I'd like to invite everybody to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will begin with public comment. If anyone would like to make any. Okay, seeing none, hearing none. I don't believe we have any recognition tonight. So first item, we have consent item, the minutes of April 25th, 2024. Everyone hopefully has had a chance to look at them. So I would love a motion to accept them, unless we need time to look at them.
I move to accept the minutes from the April 25th, 2024 meeting.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Does anyone need discussion, correction? Okay. Is that, we got the wrong thing there? Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second and no discussion, so I'd like a vote. Joe?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, the minutes are accepted. Next, we have our favorite part of the evening, a student representative report. But we only have 2 out of the 3 here, Cece and Harper. Please.
Good evening. Oh, wait, okay. Sorry. Good evening. Lots happening at the high school, or has happened. Currently, student council is working on trivia night and Dude Be Nice Week, which is going to happen in 2 weeks. Tonight is the band concert, which is why Ben Abbott is sadly not here with us. We're really sad about that. May 15th is the annual jazz night in the Nas Auditorium on Friday. It's the 15th annual jazz night in the Nas Auditorium on Friday, May 10th at 7 p.m. with the NAMS Gym Jazz Ensemble and our guest artist, which... Our guest artist.
World famous artist formerly known as Guest.
Yes. Kwan Souza do Carmo is running for National Student Council Vice President of Communications. So we're giving him our full support. Hope he wins. He is one of the finalists and one of 2 people from Massachusetts who made it to finals, which is awesome. So happy for him. This week was Teacher Appreciation week, and yesterday was the Teacher Appreciation Lunch, and several teachers were given their teacher superlatives that the student council put together this survey so the student body could vote for teachers to get their superlatives. It was really fun, and today was National Nurses Day, so we would like to thank our nurses for all they've done for us. Senior Water Wars starts next week. And today's sports, we got varsity girls tennis team versus Linfield High School, freshman boys baseball versus Chelmsford High School, freshman boys volleyball at Acton Boxborough Regional High School, junior varsity girls lacrosse, girls versus Reading Memorial High School, junior varsity boys volleyball at Acton Boxborough Regional High School, varsity boys volleyball at Acton Boxborough Regional High School, and varsity girls lacrosse, girls versus Reading Memorial High School.
Hello. Also, we had our student council elections last week. We have a lot of new executive board members. Congrats to our treasurer and NEMASC delegate, Zoe Hartman, NEMASC delegate and PR manager, Allie Roberts, historian, Ella Imperato, attendance secretary, Liv Girding, recording secretary, Lexi Gilbert, vice president, Carson Wong, and new president, Cece Choi. And then myself and Kawan Souza do Carmo will serve on the executive board also as a state representative, and Kawan will serve as our National Association of Student Councils advisor, respectively. Freshman and sophomore class elections were also this week. They were just yesterday. Midsummer Night's Dream from the Drama Guild happened on the 3rd and 4th, and those shows went really well. Everyone was very pleased with their performances. Junior prom happened at Seaglass on April 26th, and everything went very smoothly. AP testing started this week with AP Chem and AP Gov on Monday, and testing will continue till the 17th. The choir concert is next Thursday, like the band concert is tonight. National Honor Society elections also just happened with president, vice president, and treasurer being elected. There's currently a runoff election for secretary. And then the choir and drama guild elections are also happening with people putting in their applications now and campaigning starting. The track had their annual mattress fundraiser. And lots of clubs are starting to wrap up and setting their last meetings and banquets.
What a busy spring.
Yeah.
Actually, the fundraiser was North Andover Athletic Association, right?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
It's not just the track
not
club.
not the track club. It's which is a group of essentially boosters who help out our high school sports programs.
Yes, sorry, my bad.
No, that's all right. I happen to know that. But thank you. There's so much to say, but it's awesome. Great stuff. Anyone else wish to comment?
As usual, you ladies did phenomenal. We might only have one more meeting with Ben because then it's going to be graduation. So that makes me sad. But your demonstration tonight shows us that you're more than capable of carrying on and doing well. And congratulations.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, congratulations, both of you.
Yeah,
Appointments or elections.
Thank you.
Yeah.
quite
Anyone
the
else?
student leaders.
Yes. Anybody?
No,
Nope.
I echo the comments. Congratulations, and
Thank you.
and thank you
All right.
for filling us in on the very, very busy life of a high schooler in the spring.
Yes.
Thank you.
Incredible. A lot of stuff going on. All right, but thanks, guys.
Thank you.
you.
As always, I say the same thing. Welcome to stay. Understand if you don't want to. So,
Thank you.
all right. Have a good evening. And then we move on to the superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to start this evening with Donald Schmidt, I believe, if he's here with us. Yeah. Donald Schmidt conducted our school safety and security preparedness review. He's here with us virtually. Just to give you a little background about him, he has 35 years experience in the public and private sectors. He has an extensive experience in risk assessment, loss prevention, hazard mitigation, emergency management, business continuity, and crisis management planning with a diverse range of global industries. He's a published author of multiple books and numerous articles on the subject of risk management, emergency management, business continuity, and terrorism. For more than 2 decades, he's helped to write the international standards on emergency management, business continuity, and crisis management. He chaired the technical committee that writes the USA's National Preparedness Standard. He's an experienced educator and professional development instructor. He has attained numerous certifications in risk management, emergency management, and business continuity and auditing. His past work experience includes nearly 25 years of service within the HPR industry, insurance industry, corporate risk management, and progressive roles within the consulting arm of global insurance. He is proud to be an alum of the College Park Fire Department on the campus of the University of Maryland, and he's a life member of the Niantic, Connecticut Fire Department. So I'm pleased that he is here with us tonight. He's going to go through his review and share some recommendations.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you. I'm going to present here my PowerPoint, so bear with me for just a minute to get into presentation mode here.
So we're not seeing your screen.
He's about to do that.
Oh, you're about to do that? Okay.
Yeah,
there
I'm about
you
to
go.
do that
All
right now.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. So when this assessment was approved and kicked off, I wasn't part of the school committee yet, so I didn't know if it would be helpful for anyone, just to give you, if Mr. Schmidt wouldn't mind starting off just with a probably a more kind of basic scope of what does this mean when we look at safety, security, and emergency preparedness. Does this cover from, crosswalks going into school, making sure kids have
think that's part of his
crosswalks?
presentation.
So I just want to kind of, what's the general scope?
Yeah, I think that's his
Is
first
it-
slide.
Okay, all right, so I might have questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got about 20 minutes or so for the presentation, and then we've allocated approximately 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. I promise not to go over my 20 minutes or so. But first off, just wanted to identify for you the scope of this project, really, and the purpose, very, very important. The goal here is safety.
Sorry,
Protect
Don,
everyone.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're looking at your last slide. In the bigger screen, it's showing us, it says, can I answer any questions? To some,
Okay. Let me go back.
I think we need to go to presentation.
I think you need, yeah, maybe you need to, you're in presentation mode, but we're seeing the screen you should be seeing.
Okay, all right, let me just swap that over. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yep.
Okay, do you see the title slide now?
No.
Yeah. Down at the bottom, I think if you're in Power, you might need to just presentation move down towards the bottom.
If you click on that little icon on the bottom right that's in a little bit to the left of your volume, yeah, that it looks like a screen, like the old-fashioned pull-down one, the icon there, to go into presentation mode. I think he's in presentation mode, but his screens are swapped. We're seeing what he would see on his
All
laptop.
right, I think what we'll do here is we'll get out of presentation mode and I'll just make this full screen here and,
There you go.
There you go, perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
all right, okay. All right, so I'll begin again here. The overall purpose of this project is one of safety. Protect everyone in the school buildings, students, teachers, staff, visitors, everybody. And that encompasses a great deal. We'll talk about safety, security, emergency preparedness. They all come together here. And so this is a very comprehensive review. Interviewed over 100 people, beginning with all the leadership at the central office, school principals, crisis team members. You are public safety partners, chiefs of police and fire and their command staff, SROs, information technology, your security installers, and focus groups involving parents and students. So really interviewed a lot of people to get information from them. We also looked at more than 100 documents. So anything that defines safety, security, emergency preparedness, all those plan documents, and then went through every school building. Took about a week and a half and went through all the school buildings, the grounds, inside, rooftops, even in some basement areas. So again, a very comprehensive review. But the goal here is to make a very informed decision about what is the relative safety and security and emergency preparedness of North Andover Public Schools, and what can be done to enhance that safety and security. And that's really the focal point here is continuous improvement.
So Mr.
So-
Schmidt, just a question, sorry about the scope. So the scope includes, obviously, in the schools, on school grounds, but not just I just want to make sure I kind of understand the line, but wouldn't cover the child's trip into school. For example, making sure we have operating school zone signs, things like that. That would be, as long as it wasn't on school grounds, it wouldn't be incorporated.
Largely the scope was within the property boundaries.
The property
of
boundary, okay.
schools.
So it
Right.
wouldn't catch those things. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, so I want to leave you, the overall impression here is that North Andover Public Schools is generally well protected. A lot of excellent practices, a lot of great people within the district schools, as well as your public safety partners. I've worked with dozens of school districts in Massachusetts and school districts outside of Massachusetts, and you measure up pretty well. There's still work that needs to be done, certainly, there always is, but my impression was really good people, a lot of good things going on. And it really begins with the district leadership, wonderful people, very, very engaged. I keep going back to public safety partners, but, I see the connection, the relationships between, the schools and fire and police chiefs, the SROs, everyone's involvement, really, really important. Another thing we took a look at is school climate, very positive school climate, and that relates to a feeling of safety, a feeling of security, generally very good. And when we looked at incidents that have been reported, there were very few incidents that were reported. So again, that is kind of the manifestation of that positive school climate and what's being done within the schools. Hats off to health services, excellent training. They engage all staff, students, really exemplary, above and beyond what I've seen in a lot of different districts. And generally, the school buildings, well managed. You've got a couple older schools, and with older schools that were not built to today's modern, fire and life safety standards, there's some issues there. I'm sure you're probably well aware of those, and those will be addressed with capital improvements in the future. But again, a lot of good things in place in North Andover Public Schools. So as you read through the report, and it's a lengthy report, keep that in mind. There's a lot good that's in place. There's work that needs to be done. And what I try to do is identify that additional work that can further develop the program.
Don, do you prefer that we wait till the end to ask questions, or can we ask questions as we go?
If you want to, I'll try and stay on track. So Michelle there, if we start getting long, if Michelle can jump in and get us back on track. Sure, if you got a question now, I'll take it.
Well, I just wanted to further ask about positive school climate and low number of incidents. What was the data that you reviewed to determine that we have a positive school climate? And then what types of incidents were you particularly looking at? And is that just based on what's reported and not necessarily what goes unreported as well?
I was only able to see the incidents that have been reported through to the state. So Mark Grant, we went through that database to take a look at the types of incidents. So it was limited to that information.
Okay. And how many were there?
I don't have that number in front of me.
Okay, because that would be interesting. Yeah, is low 2 or is low 200 would be?
I would say the number of incidents that have been reported were probably in the neighborhood of less than a handful.
Oh, okay, so less than 5. I mean, roughly, is that?
Right.
And is that a year?
What was the period of time you studied?
Well, that report was in the first semester of this current school year. So it would have been reporting from the beginning of the school day through beginning of September through about the middle of November. So that was 2.5 months worth of data. It wasn't a full school year. But again, the number of incidents, in my opinion, was refreshingly quite low.
So in 2 months, I'm sorry.
No, I just more clarify of like what included an incident. Is that include suspensions, detentions, kids' time out of class, bullying, Title IX thing, like what gets cataloged?
It's what must be reported to the state. It was the state reporting database that we were viewing. So it includes, I think, most all of those, and I think all the incidents that we reviewed were minor incidents.
Thank you.
Okay. On this slide, you can see a Venn diagram trying to show safety, security, emergency preparedness really come together. And it involves understanding risk. It involves alerting and warning communications, a lot of other elements here. But what I want to point out here, and a major recommendation in the report, is someone within North Andover Public Schools should be appointed to oversee safety, security, and emergency preparedness. And that responsibility is not ensure it's properly developed, but also the periodic review and updating of these programs so that they meet the needs of North Andover Public Schools. Within the report, there are a lot of best practices that are included with descriptions, with hyperlinks, so that this report provides the information, the resources that can be used to further develop North Andover Public Schools' safety, security, and emergency preparedness programs.
Don, in your experience or your recommendation for a school district of our size, is this typically a separate FTE, or is this a duty of someone who is already part of the administration, or is this a new body given the number of buildings we have?
I think it's one that can be assigned to somebody who is, in a part-time basis. That's pretty typical here in Massachusetts. In other parts of the country, there are full-time people, certainly for larger school districts. But I think that it could be, for the size of North Andover Public Schools, it could be somebody's part-time responsibility.
Thank you.
Okay. Talking about a safety program, the goal is to prevent accidents, injuries, and as part of that responsibility of having somebody in charge of a safety program, also develop a program where there are safety team members that come together periodically to represent the entire district. And then within each school, there be a representative safety committee. And different department heads would participate, health services would participate, certainly a principal would be involved. But the goal is to build it in every school that there are responsibilities for safety and security and emergency preparedness. And that the school-based teams would be working within their own schools to implement what needs to be implemented, to do the periodic reviews, to ensure that training is done as needed. And at the district level, that team is looking at what the overall needs, where the priorities are, and so forth. But this is an opportunity to bring together safety, security, and emergency preparedness. And when I went through the schools, I was doing a very in-depth, survey or inspection. And, there are a lot of little things that I found. And hopefully with proper guidance, these safety teams within schools can be finding these issues right away, and they hopefully would be able to take care of any unsafe condition, or if they see something that is inappropriate or unsafe actions, they will know enough to be able to address that right away. So the goal is to build in safety into the culture of each school. That's the goal here. You've invested money in upgrading the security systems within the schools, a lot of really good equipment, professionally installed. You have a technology, the Genetech system. That technology is very capable. And so my recommendations about security really to enhance that security. Take full advantage of the equipment that is in place now, and surround that as well with enhancements in the area of visitor signage. There are what we call crime prevention through environmental design. And we look at a school and say, anybody on school grounds, that there are signage to tell them if they want to enter the school, what door should they enter. Other signage out in the playgrounds, restricting use of those areas during certain hours. A lot of signage, which keeps honest people honest, and those that don't pay attention to signage are ones that may require attention. So it's signage, it is screening of any visitors coming into the school, badging, and that will require some training for the office staff to properly screen. But now, with your surveillance cameras, security cameras, we need to take those and really exploit their capabilities by using the advanced features to identify that somebody is approaching the school, and it can bring that image to full screen within the office, flash it, which would call attention to the secretaries in the offices so that they've got somebody approaching. And by putting that image on a full screen, they have better visual acuity to be able to assess that person. They may know them, and then they can let them in. If they don't know them, if something doesn't look right, based upon the recommended training, then they know that they need to take action to scrutinize that visitor who is requesting entry to the school. So this process of enhancing security involves further utilization of your existing technologies. It may require installing some cameras that are right over the doorway and point directly at the path of the visitors approaching that entrance. You see in some of the graphics here, cameras are high, they're to the side, don't always provide a good image for the secretaries in the offices to be able to make those important decisions about whether to let those visitors into the school building. You know, other technologies, the new lockdown buttons, want to make sure that those capabilities are fully implemented. When I was in the schools in November, this new technology had just been installed, and want to make sure that all of these systems are fully operational and implemented and built into the emergency procedures for each of the schools as well.
So Don, can you elaborate on what exactly that does when someone hits? Two questions. What exactly does the lockdown button do? And then the second question is, do we have them in all our buildings?
I'm going to take the second question first. Lockdown buttons were installed in all the schools. When I did my surveys, I'm not sure whether they're all function in English yet, but they were to be installed in all schools. And when those buttons are pressed, they lock the exterior doors. And with the new access control system, only very select few, police with their access cards can get in, and it might be just some of the administrators that would have access into the school buildings. And the goal there, we don't want a teacher entering into the building when the building is put into lockdown. But the lockdown access cards of police would allow them, obviously, to access a school building. But my overarching recommendation is to take a look at the new technologies, make sure that those that need to use them have access to use them, they know how to use these capabilities. These capabilities are integrated into security procedures as well as emergency procedures, so that if something were to happen, everyone knows how to use the equipment and they know what they're supposed to do if it is an emergency.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's take a look at emergency plans. For a school, there is state-mandated multi-hazard emergency plans. Now, at the district level, there is a comprehensive plan, really based upon a lot of work done out of the Northeast Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council. So it's got a lot of good information. But within the schools, there's really not a school emergency plan. There are medical and behavioral emergency plans, again, state mandated, those are in place. There are other procedures that some schools have kind of pulled together, but really there's a need here to have a school emergency operations plan that's consistent for all schools, but can be customized to the individual school's emergency team or crisis team and the resources within that school. And then within the classrooms, there should be concise information which define the role and responsibilities of the teachers, and then emergency procedures for if there's a fire evacuation, the evacuation travel path, and evacuation procedures and accountability and what to do if there's a security threat. But we need to have that concise documentation in every classroom so that every teacher knows what their role is and what they are supposed to do if there is an emergency. So there's good documentation within the district. It just really isn't in the schools to the extent it needs to be. You know, I was a firefighter for many, many years, and we did a lot of training, drills, and exercises. So when the alarm came in, we knew our role, our responsibilities were, and we went into action. And when we take a look at a public school district, there is a lot of training, drills, and exercises that should be done. Now, there are fire drills, evacuation drills that are required by state law. Those are done. You have ALICE drills. They've done a great job to implement ALICE within the schools, and the SROs and police are involved in that. Again, great job there. But there's more to it than just fire evacuation drills and the ALICE drills. And there's more training that is required. So this curriculum you see on the slide identifies on the top row the different group or audience for different training, drills, and exercises. And I can't overemphasize how important it is that there be a curriculum in place that really defines what training is going to be done, who gets trained and when, and then the drills and the exercises that should be done. We take a look at exercises. There are a lot of discussion-based ones that are not too involved, but they engage everyone to go through a hypothetical scenario. How would the school respond to that type of an incident? It familiarizes everyone with their role, the procedures, and also gets them to critically look at capabilities and see what needs to be done to ensure that we have the requisite capabilities when an emergency occurs. Because there are emergencies in every school, many medical emergencies, there are fires, hazmat incidents. In fact, when I was in North Andover, there was a fire involving a laptop computer in the middle school. So, emergencies do occur, and there's a need to be prepared. Okay. I want to switch over to high school and the science prep rooms. These are chemical storage, equipment storage rooms. And there was an effort a number of years ago to clean out the chemicals, the older chemicals that were within these prep rooms. And that work started, but it wasn't completed. And so there is an excess quantity of chemicals, needs to be properly organized, and the rooms need to be cleaned up. So I want to just point out that that's an area that I see at pretty much every high school I go into. So it's not an uncommon, but this is an important recommendation that should be addressed hopefully sooner rather than later. Okay, into the end of my time, and I'll take your questions in a sec. I just want to kind of recap again. What I saw in North Andover, I had a really good feeling working with the people in North Andover, going through the schools. There's a lot of good that's in place. I think there's more work that needs to be done, as described in our report, but I think you should be proud of the accomplishments to date, and I think with that proactive leadership, I'm sure that you can continuously improve the safety, security, and emergency preparedness within North Andover schools. Questions?
Yes.
Do you want to go first?
I'll go first.
You go first.
Is ALICE still or regarded as the best system for addressing lockdowns and potential outside threats coming into a school? Is that still regarded as the right and best thing to do for our kids?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to. Good. Thank you. I'm confused about the emergency operations plan. Are you saying we have them, but they're not documented, or teachers don't have all the things? Can you just I feel like we have them. I know that the things happen and they get emails about like successful fire drills and like, successful lockdown drills, but what exactly is missing then?
Okay. An emergency operations plan would be utilized by the school crisis team. And the operations plan, first off, identifies the various teams, medical team, behavioral response team, and others that may be called upon to respond to different types of emergencies. There are many different types of emergencies that occur in schools. Severe weather is an example. So, the plan identifies the teams, it identifies roles and responsibilities for different situations, and it has procedures that would be followed. We know that you have very capable fire and police and emergency medical services in North Andover. So what we're trying to do is within the school's emergency operations plan is to ensure that schools take the correct actions in those first 5 minutes while help is on the way. And that can oftentimes make the difference. So a lot of documentation that's currently at the district level really needs to come down into the schools, and then the schools populate it with their teams and they customize it to their particular school. The teacher documents that I mentioned, those are concise instructions for the teachers. Their responsibility is for their students to get them to a position of safety, to report emergencies, to account for their students, things like that. That's why their instructions are fairly concise, whereas the school emergency operations plan is more comprehensive.
Thank you. In terms of on that chart for recommendations for training and exercises curriculum, and this might be for Ms. Lathrop, do we have a good enough outward communication system like School Messenger to get information to parents quickly right now, or is that something we should think about investing in a different product eventually or sooner than later, given all the other budgeting things
So
happening?
you could probably answer that better as parents. We do have a system that we use that can do both phone calls and emails. I think that might be a question from Mike Grant, our IT person, if you wanted to look at if it's not robust enough, but I believe it's robust. I haven't heard that parents or families have not received emails or calls.
Great, thank you. And then I feel like I had one more question and now I lost it. I will wait.
Can you mind? And then
Yes.
Can I jump in on that question about School Messenger?
Yeah.
School Messenger is a very capable technology. And what I find working with many school districts is they have different technologies that are all very capable, but they have not been fully implemented within the school district. So look to what you have, and I think you've got a capable technology there. And look within our report here, because there are some recommendations related to what we call crisis communications and use of School Messenger. And I think that might provide guidance on how best to use the technology that you already have without spending any more money.
Thank you. And I did remember my last question. I was visiting my son, went into the middle school building last week for my son's IEP, and one of the things I noticed is that from the camera at the front of the building to the place where we sign in is a good 25 yards from the front door to the main office. And in some cases that happens in other buildings too, like from where you enter to where you actually get your badge and all that is quite the distance. Is that something we should be more concerned about, or is that still, if we better utilize our camera systems, does that mitigate the distance that we would have between the entrance and the people who do all the checking?
In my recommendations, I recommend that there be cameras directly over the front door. So as visitors are approaching the office, that camera can get the best possible picture of them. And to your point, you are correct that in many cases, the cameras are to the right, some distance away from that door, and they do not capture the best frontal view of the visitor, because we want to see not only the face, but we want to see the body. We want to see if somebody is carrying something or attempting to conceal something. And so that straight on camera angle can be very important to be able to provide that information to whoever is getting ready to press that button to let them into the school building.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I do have one question. If you can go back to the slide with the training and exercise curriculum recommendations, the grid. I was just wondering, because I'm just looking across the columns, it shows the different members of the school and including the students that are part or would be trained and go through these exercises. Is there also a place here where our police and fire are also being trained hand in hand? Does the training happen with everyone, or is that kind of baked in? Should they have separate? I guess should they have separate columns here, kind of highlighting their roles with security, safety, and emergency procedures, or are they baked in already?
Your public safety partners should be involved in training. They should be invited to training. When there are exercises, it is great to ask them to participate. Really the goal of that joint training is to get their viewpoint, especially when you're doing exercises, so you can understand what happens when that 911 call is placed and what police and fire and EMS, what they're doing, and so it's important that they be involved. I didn't call them out on this curriculum here, but the police and fire should be asked to what extent do they want to participate. And a lot of times what I find is that, police and fire will get involved with some training or some exercises, but not all. So that's something you just need to work out with them. But it was not an omission of this. It's kind of implicit that you want to train, with your public safety partners as much as you can.
Thank you. And then one more specific question. So I know you mentioned here, visitor policy and visitor screening. Is any of that include processes around making sure things like all parent volunteers in schools have active Corey forms and things like that on file? Is that anything that you looked at in terms of safety? So I know that's one of our policies, that parents going in and volunteering in the classroom should have Corey forms. Is that process examined? And if you did examine it, what did you find?
Having gone through that process, having worked for a lot of school districts, I've gone through Corey and story checks many times. And I think it's one where school policy has to be within your security procedures. So there has to be that kind of checkoff, if you will, so that if you have volunteers coming into the school, that before they can get their visitor's badge, there's been a check to say that they, as a volunteer, can be issued that visitor's badge. There has to be that control put in place to take your policy for Corey and story checks into the security procedures and the visitor badging process.
Is that check, that policy in place in all of our schools?
Yeah, I off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I can't say if there's a specific. What was that?
I think that might be an area that we want to look at to make sure that as all parent volunteers go in, that someone's checking that they've got Corey forms
So
on file.
that is the policy.
Okay.
So.
It may just be an area that we look at.
I think we're just saying there's a difference between having a policy and policy being practiced.
It was whether it was happening.
Oh, right, yeah, I know that's the policy to have the Corey form, but my question was just if the fact that, ask if it was a policy that we were checking before parents came in, and if it was,
It's a multi-layer process. So every school sends out information about queries and when queries need to happen, and that queries should be done yearly. And then if you've had a quarry at like the YMCA, it doesn't count. You have to be quarried in the place that you're volunteering. So every school has a process. I would suspect it's probably in our school handbooks. And usually gets sent out in the beginning of the school year. And then what is supposed to happen is if teachers are doing something like a field trip, they send those parent volunteers to the office. The office checks to see if they've been quarried or not. Same thing for class parties, class volunteers. It's a system that works when all the people who are so, you know, whoever's your room parent coordinator needs to understand her or his role in explaining to room parents they need to be quarry checked. I sort of get the sense that you're saying that our system may be falling or broken in some areas, and there's probably some schools that do it better than others. I think that sometimes things pop up like a field trip and, you know, it's a one-off and a parent thinks, oh, I didn't know to quarry check. I mean, there are things you can put in place like the beginning of the school year, open house night, everybody does a quarry, just trying to remind people to do it, have your secretaries there to sort of expedite that process. But it's a
part of the badge. I think what he recommended is part of the badge process.
Yes, the badge process. It's a multi-layer approach, and if there are holes, that's probably something to shore up, and it should be part of our sort of overall policies. It's probably part of that crisis team that he was talking about a little bit too. So like just making sure there's a checks and balance system, that should be like an administrative assistant position. So if you had those checklists in place, they would know it's something they have to do.
Thank you. It's probably an opportunity for us just to look at as we're going through this and having, you know, talking. I know definitely as a parent, I've seen certainly to do the quarry form. I've done a few of them, but getting them, just making sure the process is there and followed to make sure that they're checked. Yeah, an opportunity. That's all my question.
So my question is, again, I'm going to go back to that same chart that Ms. Comier had referenced with the training and exercise curriculum. I know this is a recommendation. I'm curious to know, out of the training and exercises that we currently have in place, I guess what I'm really focusing on is particularly the administrator portion, maybe the office staff portion, of what kind of trainings and how often we're doing them now compared to what we should be implementing.
Well, what I found is that the schools are doing a great job with a lot of the ALICE drills and the evacuation drills. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the nurses are doing a lot of training in that area. When I ask questions about exercises, not many exercises being done. So clearly that's probably the biggest void. Some of the training you see on de-escalation techniques, for example, that training is provided for some, but let's say the nurses said they want to be included in that as well. So some of these are an expansion to include other groups with existing training. And again, this is a kind of a model. So I think that it's one for you to review as a school district and see where your priorities are and what you can do with just existing programs that are in place. There's some things here, the exercises, that's one where I think there's probably the biggest void from my view.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Any more comments? All right, and Don, I take it that the spreadsheet in the back here is just like a sort of much more detailed sort of checklist for us to implement your recommendations. Am I reading that right?
Yes, in the report, the final report, which I submitted to give a copy to Michelle earlier today, and then there's a separate document that I produced for Jim Mealy, which is just all the recommendations, and that was to make it easier to manage kind of the process of assessing and working on those recommendations.
Yep, I see it. It's quite comprehensive. It's great. Okay.
So can I follow up on that?
Yeah.
So where there's an H, I'm assuming that means high priority. Are those areas that maybe we're a little bit weaker in that we need to prioritize better? Or is that just a generalized high priority?
That prioritization is my professional opinion about what's most important. And that takes into consideration, what's the risk? You know, there's some things that are higher risk. You know, I can give you an example. One of the schools I saw, there's a lot of vegetation on the telephone pole that if there was ever a grass fire, it could take out, power to the school. I'm going to put that maybe at a little bit lower level, but then the school science prep labs in the high school. That's one that I said the risk was fairly high because if something happens when somebody's in that room, it could be injurious to that individual and maybe more significant to that. So that was my kind of assessment of what is the potential risk. We take, well, what's the probability of something bad happening? And then if it does happen, how bad is it going to be? And so that prioritization is kind of a judgment between frequency and severity.
Okay, thank you.
One more question. So I know when you had started off, you had recommended that we bring in, or we have someone assigned, a part-time person assigned as for the management of the SSEP. Is that really I'm just thinking in terms of, if we were to implement all of these, is it just a part-time person to take this, or is there more roles that would need to be hired to make these happen? Or is this really just checking things off a list based on priority? Just trying to understand sort of the financial impact.
My experience in past employment is that it's usually assigned to somebody within the district. So in my former district, the finance director, the assistant superintendent for finance, that was part of his job. But you would also look at your director of nursing would have a critical role in this as well. Facilities, the person who oversees facilities. So they'd sort of be like they had like a little team who oversaw that. And then there was a sort of a district committee, and then from that there were school committees, and not school committees, but like committees within the schools who did it. But it's usually a function of an add-on to a function of someone's job.
Okay. All right. So other than if there is some equipment that isn't working, these are things that looking at them, the high priority items, based on kind of how much time people have, we could start picking off the list and working through them without hiring more people or hiring more equipment.
Yeah, I would not make that recommendation.
Okay. Awesome.
The question about sort of like follow-up to drills and whatnot, I imagine if we had somebody who had that role of management of SSEP, that then after or they met periodically after any Alice drill or fire drill or other incident, would then the safety team gather and talk about things that went well and give feedback and because as parents we get, there was an Alice lockdown, it went well, but we also know there's always room for improvement and how things actually happen. So is that mechanism already in place, or is there ways for us to set up that system?
Yeah, I think it's probably partially already in place. I think there are some schools that have active crisis teams, and I know that all of the principals meet with the fire and police department to discuss their Alice drills. So, the coordination when it's going to happen, then discussion of Alice drills, and then they will review with them anything that went wrong. So I know recently there was a fire drill at one school. I saw the report from the fire department who had met with the principal about some storage things being kept in a hallway that really shouldn't be kept there because it's in the egress to be able to get outside. So then they follow up with us. So there are teams like that, but we might want to just document it, get it on paper, sort of have a flow chart.
All right, this is more kind of maybe tightening up
More
some
formalizing.
things or
More-
formalizing
Yeah.
Right,
things.
right.
Okay.
All right. Well done, and thank you very much for your report and your presentation.
Thank you,
My
Don.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a great rest of your meeting. Good night.
Good night.
All right, good night. All right, that was part A.
Part A. Part B. Marcy's going to turn us back, I think, or somebody. Yeah,
We got a couple of trees today.
Yeah.
yeah, we're going to try not to do that. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the school budget, give you an update. So what you do have is the budget report. I shared that with the school committee. This is the FY24 budget report, and we run that off of Munis. What we had, I had it printed for you by location, so it's printed by schools, so you can see each school. So If there's different ways you'd like to see this report, there are other ways we can run it. We can run it by department, we can run it by overall school budget, if that's what you want to see. I thought it might be more helpful to look at it based on schools. What we can do is drill down a little bit if you want to see, so salaries includes all the people in the school salaries, but if you wanted to see the difference between general education salaries and special education salaries, we can pull that out for you. But why don't you spend some time with this, tell us if this works for you, and if there are other ways you'd like to see these reports. It's cumbersome, there's lots there, but this is more of just FYI for you.
Sorry, I'm working.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yep. So a question, just specifically regarding reading this, the Munis output that you
Yep.
did give us. Right, so the, maybe it would be useful to take us through the columns and what each column means.
I will tell you, I have my contacts on, it's late at night, and I can't see the papers that well.
I can tell you what.
You can wear if necessary.
So basically, you can see up top, so your very first paper, and I don't have this, Marcy, for you to be able to see, is system-wide. So this is the whole system, right? And then as you turn the page, so then going across, you're going to see the original, what was approved, any transfers, any revised, something that's expended, what we've encumbered, and then a balance. So you'll see if we have a deficit or if we actually have money in that area.
So for an individual to understand this, right, like right at the top of the salaries line. So you have all these different lines, right?
Correct. This is for the district. You're seeing system-wide right now. So
Right. So just as an example, how do I know the difference between 102,003,00, the first line, and the second line? Is that you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
like, do these
if
correspond to
you want
individual
to know, yes, they
people, or-
correspond to individual people.
Okay.
This one right now is district, so salaries would be probably our general salaries. It's, what does that say, about $60,000?
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So that's
and
a
then
person.
summer school, you can see tutors, you can see
Okay.
different ones. So I could ask Tracy to tell us what each of those codes are.
The codes,
That's what I mean.
I mean, like, just as an example, like this, 3/4 of the way down is 240. That's salaries that come out of the 240 grant. There's salaries that come out of general budget. You know, so all those codes mean
Different things.
different. Yeah, whether it's a grant or a line item in the the operating budget.
I think we've got to find a way to summarize
We could-
this where we,
So Tracy
get there, right?
So
We're-
Tracy is
code.
wonderful
Yeah.
about summarizing, and so
I-
these are
I
what
should-
this is
should
sort of
commit,
the full
yeah.
report. So what
Yeah.
I did was, we ran that for you the first
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
around. But we certainly can tweak it, and she can make graphs, and she's very good at doing all those things and pulling that information from Munis. So as you know more about what you're hoping to see on these Munis sheets, we
Okay.
certainly can tailor them to you.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would suggest that to make it easier on Tracy and Pam, that maybe everybody could send me what they'd like to see, and I can consolidate it into a single request, so that she's not getting 5 requests.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think we should also likely try to work hand in hand with FinCom and the town manager. And then likely the town manager, we may even want to see more, depending on what she's looking at. There could
The
be
town
diff-
manager and I did this together. So
This
this is
each-
what, I met with
Okay.
Tracy, Marcy and I met with the town manager and with Lynn Savage, and this is what they recommended we share with you.
Okay, so this is the detail that they want. So maybe FinCom might want a different level. I'm just trying to think, so we don't ask for you don't have 6 committees coming in
Right.
asking for 17 different versions of the report. I'm just trying, we should if possible, we should try to find the
Well-
same level that works, so
So
this
that she
doesn't
can do
become a
one for
full-time
everybody.
job,
Yeah, I
right?
got you.
Like the-
Yeah. So
We gotta-
I'll take on that responsibility of assembling what everybody here would like to see, cross-checking against what others are looking for, and see if we can make one request. You have a question?
So I have a couple of questions. The
Yeah.
first one is this, if you could make this available in the form of a spreadsheet, for example, salaries P is probably not the complete entry. And it would be easier for me anyway, if I just had the spreadsheet, I could see this. I hope it wasn't anything I said. Anyway, and perhaps save you a lot of trouble. because, I could make it wider, I could maybe add things
Yeah.
up myself.
Tracy can
And
convert
that
this to a
would-
spreadsheet.
Perfect, yeah.
Just save everybody a lot of time. And
Yeah.
I don't see any reason that you couldn't make it available to other committees, or for that matter, the public.
Yeah, it should be public.
committees.
Well, it's on Clear, so the ClearGov, I think that's the program that the Finance Committee had recommended, which allows the budget. And I think when Marcy and I met with them yesterday, they said that they are inputting our budget into ClearGov, correct?
Yep.
So it'd be good to, is ClearGov something that we could get the reports right out of ClearGov? Right, I think maybe this is where we need to educate, or at least I need to educate myself, speak for me. I need to educate myself on what's in ClearGov to kind of go, does this work for us? And would that have these numbers in a system that then we could answer our own questions by moving the data around in that same system rather than going to Excel, right?
Well,
Like,
I'm sorry, thank you. But for those of us who've spent well, not quite yet, but a lifetime learning Excel, I can't imagine that program wouldn't allow an export to Excel.
Does, yeah.
That might make it easier. So my next question is about the subcategories. I started looking at this at home, and I said, oh, the first group is the whole district. And then I noticed that the original appropriation was $4,592,000. So it isn't the whole district, because the whole district budget is whatever it is, 60 million, and salaries are a lot more than 5 million. So I guess I don't know exactly what that first group is. I don't mean to.
Yeah, I don't know either.
No,
I'll be honest with you. We certainly can find out that information for you.
No, I think this is a very good first pass. It's a very good way to start the discussion. I don't mean to be critical.
No.
I think,
I-
Ed, I could,
Like on page 4, there's another salary.
Right.
Page
They
4
did it
starts it on
because
central office.
Yeah, they did it by what you had asked, I think, last time, is they did it by, this is by school building.
Correct.
So each, each building, school building has a school building code, and same thing. I'm not even sure, I can see central office, because central office, but I'm not even sure which building
And
is
it's
what.
here.
Yeah.
I mean, no, there's a lot to like, but
So like when you get to page 4, so the 1 through 3 was system-wide. Page 4 is going to start central office for you. And then
I know I found it. It's definitely here.
page,
school.
There it is, central office, right. And then
page
it says
6
high
starts the high school.
But what is, I don't know what system, what is
system-
system-wide mean?
what
then?
system-wide
Central
means
office.
is
We don't know,
Work
yeah,
across, not,
possibly.
System-wide is
not
not the whole
central
system.
Correct.
correct.
it's
Correct.
people who, in my job
Like
in
I'm
Holliston,
system-wide.
I am system-wide.
Correct.
Wouldn't you be
Okay.
central
But I'm not
office?
I'm not central office, though. I work in
No.
multiple places.
I mean,
Yeah,
I would
so-
think
so
Pam
it's-
would be central.
Pam would be
These could be
Wouldn't it be
people that work in
Yeah.
multiple spots.
Possibly, yeah.
Could be, I mean.
So yeah,
Yeah,
then
so
so
we need
understanding who's what
Across
the
the entire
category
district.
means.
I think
So-
sort of to go to some of the things that you were talking about, maybe, I don't know when now, a couple meetings ago, but if you went to, you could see one of the schools, so high school, so you can see the budget manager, the principal has their own budget. This is what the principal manages, these are all the salaries of the high school, this is what they have for curriculum and supplies at the high school.
No, that's why this is a good first step.
Yeah,
No, this is lots of great information.
Yeah, it
I think it'll just take me a little bit to understand
Yeah.
what each category means and how it plays out. But thank you very much.
Well, yeah, I do think since it's probably pretty trivial for Tracy to do it, to make a spreadsheet version for us for this first one, just so we can play with it. Not play with it, work on it, I guess is a
Yeah,
better
I
word. But
think-
you know what I mean, manipulate it. And then I'll take on the responsibility of assembling everybody's sort of formatting requests.
and then I would probably suggest that you come in and sit down with Tracy, because
Yeah.
then you can manipulate with her on the computer and sort of generate what is the best
Yep.
thing that you know, the best product that you want to see.
Yeah.
It will be tricky to do that sort of back and forth email, so probably once you have a sense from the committee, it makes sense for you to come in and actually have a sit down with her.
It sounds great.
So
Completely agree, yeah. Okay.
at some point soon, I think, this also relates to how we do the budget, how we think about it. There's information, and then there's the sort of, if you want to use the term, legal part, because I've spent some time with our procedures, our policies, and we are required to do a budget by cost centers, and then there's the question, there's something in there which I think would be unworkable, which is that every single transfer has to be approved by the school committee. I think at the moment none have been, which is too little, but every one would be totally unworkable. So at some point we need to think about not so much for information, but for the purposes of budgeting and control, what are the categories of spending within which principals or other people who are running a part of this are free to make transfers, and what are the part that needs to come to the school committee? And so, in addition to looking at it from an information perspective, we should look at it from that perspective as well.
I think that, I agree, and I think that's some of the work we need to undertake soon, but by that I mean
The summer.
after the next, the summer, after the next 75 days.
Oh, I'm fine with that.
And I agree completely that some of
but
this is policy work to think about when
Yeah.
when things get moved, what should we know and when, I think is a fair thing
What
for us to talk about.
what do we have to approve?
Yeah.
What do we have to approve?
And what do we not? And should
Right.
certain ones just be reported out to us, and should certain ones be
But-
approved? And like, that's a fair thing to talk about.
I agree about not during the next 75 days, but since the policies require that a major change in the budget has to be approved by the committee, we have not approved the new version of the budget for fiscal 2025, and so we're going to have some categories to approve it.
We did approve the budget for,
No, you approved a budget in February, but if you read the policies, it says that changes in the budget or transfers, it says, the exact wording is that things happen during the year if management feels that it needs to change things around. That's totally appropriate, but it has to come to the school committee. And certainly, the plan for next year is different than what you envisioned in February, and therefore, it needs to be approved. It hasn't been approved, and it says it needs to be approved by whatever the centers we agree on for budget purpose. So I agree with you that we shouldn't do it until the end of the fiscal year, but then it's got to happen pretty quickly, because technically speaking, we haven't approved a new version of the budget.
I agree that it has to happen quickly thereafter. I was thinking that we should do some of that policy work in the beginning of the next fiscal year, and then we can make it.
We've just agreed on that.
Yep, and I'm just saying,
I
like, in
guess
terms.
for point of clarification, sorry for interrupting you, I want to be clear that at Tuesday's town meeting, I am presenting an approved budget by the school committee.
Yes.
You are.
Yes, you are. I think, and it's a number that we agreed on, and that's
Correct.
what
The
the town will vote on.
bottom line has never changed.
Yep, the bottom line is not changing, nor will it. I think as we go forward into July and August, I think there's an opportunity for us, just in terms of timeline for expectations for everybody, is that would be a good time to look at the policies about transfers and policies about what we would want the budget to be, how we want it to be categorized. And then moving forward from there, we can start to do that work. I don't imagine, Ms. Lathrop, in the first 3 months of the fiscal year, that there would be a lot of transfers happening, and that gives us time to get it to the way we would like it for the beginning of the school year.
Right. And I think that perhaps we might want to bring somebody in to help us do that and to understand the rules, because
Yeah.
I think that we have heard, we're all reading the same material, slightly maybe interpreting just differently. It might make sense to bring somebody in to help us really understand what that role might be.
And I think that the reviews we're going to talk about shortly are going to bring some of that information
Yep. and
forward.
make some recommendations from there.
But just to be clear, we definitely agree on what the bottom line of the budget is, but we have not approved a plan, a revised plan to take into account what's already happened as to how dividing that in a cost centers is going to be different than originally envisioned. I think we can do both of those, right? We can agree that what Pam presents at town meeting is what you guys voted on in February.
Right, and that's what the
But-
town has to approve, that
That's right.
number.
But what we have to approve is more than the overall total, and we have not approved a revised version at a cost center level as
Yeah.
required by policy.
I think
So
we're-
I think we're in agreement that that's what we're going to do after the end of the fiscal year.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Just not to beat that dead horse, but there could be more than that, policy that wasn't being followed. So I think once we do the audit and we get all of those items, again, we'll have a list of things and recommendations, and we work off the highest priority items on whatever's on that list, then we will have that outside view, and then we work our way off from the top of that list down after the start of the fiscal
And I
year.
guess I want to caution you as you start thinking about, if you're thinking about cost centers, so we presented to you the revised budget with the revised numbers, not changing the bottom line. If what you decide and agree and believe is right is that you get to decide those cost areas and make changes, it could have ramifications on positions that we have not been prepared for. So I just want to caution you on that.
Okay, yep, I
So
think
it
that's,
might in the end be, just throwing it out there, it might be a recommendation might be as we prepare for next year's budget to implement those types of budget practices versus.
Right. I think the budget
Right.
process needs to change for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
yeah,
you.
I think we all understand that we can't just, we have to take everything into consideration if we're going to
Correct.
make any changes. I think that's your point, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Want me to keep going?
Yes,
All right.
please.
So, Marcy, you want to click the slideshow? So I just have a couple slides for you to just give you a little bit of general overview. Some people watched the Finance Committee this week and the Select Board. Melissa Rodriguez, our town manager, presented at both of them. These are an overview of some of the slides she shared with a little bit more information from us as well. I want to start by thanking Melissa and the town's team and her team. We've had a really collaborative approach. Marcy and I, as I said, met with them this week. We've made a commitment to continuing to meet with them, and Tracy is working closely with Lynn and with Lori from the town as well. So this slide is something you probably already have seen. This is just a review of FY24. The left side is just outlining again for you where the revenue is coming from in order to meet our deficit. If you watched FinCom last night, you heard that we have two rather large bills that were not included in the original number that we have to take care of. And so we also learned that we will receive the circuit breaker relief money. So that money will be applied to that in order to handle those bills. What you should understand is by accepting the circuit breaker relief money now, it means that we will be less $160,000. Is that right, Marcy?
Yes, so there's two pools of money that we can draw on. One, the $160,000 one pool of money we have to use this year, and that was the initial pool of money that we plan to use, and the other pool could be used this year or next year, but if you use it this year, it's gone type of thing. It's no reallocation. So that additional $160,000 that I think initially we thought we would keep into the pool for next year will be used in the pool for this year.
Because of those two big bills, we can't save for.
Correct. So it's going.
Future. It's going.
It's going. So when it's
So then, does that mean next year we won't get any circuit breaker money, or
no,
we would
it's
get
less that.
whatever we
less
get minus
160.
160?
Yep.
Okay.
How big were the two big bills that came in? What was the total?
I don't know the exact total of the two bills, but it looked like adding about another $1 million to the deficit. So through the work that we have done with the town manager and the work that's already been approved and what the town manager is doing to support us, we still are looking at 509,254 right there. That's the deficit that we have right now. The town. Go ahead.
I just want to point one thing out in case it's not clear. So the additional 1.013 is the number, 1.013 million. It all was in categories we're already aware of. There were no new categories of expenses of any kind that we hadn't heard about. So these were just that the initial 3.1 number that we got was actually really 4.2, to be clear.
Actually what?
Was actually 4.2. In other words, 4.1. Right, 3.1 plus 1.013, 4.1,
So
013.
how, these were payments for students in out-of-district placements?
And transportation. And so we get billed by the month, and so the May bill came in, and we knew we did know that these bills would be coming. I believe that it was part of the known number at one point, and perhaps it did not appear in the overall list.
So, to be fair to you, you were not responsible for this at the time that it happened, but it's hard for me to see how we couldn't, I mean, certainly student tuition, you know at the beginning of the year what it is.
Yeah, I think that we knew that,
Well,
no,
just-
I wasn't there, so.
But transportation, maybe, it's still hard for me to see how we could not have known that there was $1 million out there.
Yeah.
No-
I think it was known, based on what was discussed last night.
I'm sorry, sir. You're out
It
of
was
order. You're out of
known, so
order.
these were bills that we had, that we knew, our students that we had, or things that we had to pay. I think we anticipated using circuit breaker money, which is some of what we are doing. I wasn't there. I wasn't, I wasn't the person that was making that decision.
Nor should you have been.
And, I think that, I don't really know how to, I mean, I think we all know that, right? We know that's where we are, and this is where we are, and we're,
Right.
So would these,
Sorry.
does this extra money this year mean that the plan that we laid out for
No.
next year is now underfunded?
no, it has no reflection on FY '25 or the plan that we had laid out for FY '25.
So the projections for next year were made on the basis of a correct total for this year?
Correct, and the town manager is supporting us with this current $509,254 through her budget and some of the things that she is doing. There are some
Okay.
grants that are still available that she can use. She's there's some projects that are in place. I know one of the things she said is the bookmobile. It was supposed to be staffed by 2 people. It'll only be staffed by 1 person. Things like that in order to
ARPA, more additional
the more
ARPA money came back.
additional ARPA money came back.
I mean, yes, like it is what it is what we're faced with. I think it's important to know, and this is no reflection on you at all, Ms. Lathrop, that the town manager has been stupendous in doing this and figuring out how to cover it. But like we're literally talking about, we had $7 and change left over from one project that we're now being used, and $15 from another, and $5,000 from here. That we are very much scraping the bottom of the barrel and looking under the couch cushions for some quarters, right? Which is what has to happen to protect the town's finances so we can continue doing the things we want to do for the town. And I thank you to the town and to you and your team for working with her to secure that. And it also makes me at the same time, I'm very thankful for that and still very sad, right? Because it impacts the quality of life for all of our kids and all of our people. So
I will say, I think that she tried to do as minimal impact
Right.
and looked at certain areas, and just like they are looking at every aspect, we have done the same thing. So we have, we have looked at every cash revenue and looking at things we may have. So there are some things that we did journal entries for as well. For there was $5.15 left in a transportation grant, and so we have made all those journal entries. Which leads me to the other side of this chart. I think it's important to share with you some of the things that the school department has said. We have talked, that we have done. We have talked about how we have helped with this, or we have, our action. So we have closed our purchase orders. We have a spending freeze. We have done journal entries where we can in order to pay for some of the things that we know we need to pay for. We have examined all of our grants and any other revenue sources. I want to remind people that grants often come with conditions, and that there are specific ways that you need to spend your grants. So I can't just close out all grants in order to be able to do this, nor could Marcy. We have transferred staff and we have reassigned staff. So what that means is we had a student come into our district who needed support. We looked at all of our schools. We did a careful analysis of how staff was being used. We found a teaching assistant at one school who, we could reduce one teaching assistant and still provide the level of services at that school. So we transferred that teaching assistant to be able to support the new student that came into our district. We have reassigned one of the administrative assistants in central office. So if a secretary or in one of the schools is absent or out sick now, one of our central office secretaries will go and take that job on. So that's not a substitute secretary, to stop a substitute secretary. We have reduced extra hours where we can in the schools. I'm hesitant to say that we have said no extra hours. I know what's what everybody wants me to say, but that's near impossible when you're working with children. But to every extent that we can, we have reduced extra hours and reduced overtime. We have custodial overtime, which has been an issue, so we've worked with the custodial manager trying to limit that, and looking at making sure our schools are safe and clean, but any ways that we can make reductions, we have. And then lastly, one of the things that we are doing that I just want to make you aware of, because it has a implication for some families, is we've restructured our kindergarten screening. So kindergarten screening is required by law. It's part of Child Find. And so typically, the last few years, what North Andover has done is when school closes, the next 2 days, we bring our teachers back, our kindergarten teachers back. It's a cost to the district to have them do the screening of the students, which helps the ABAC team, the ABECC team, plan for placement for their students. That is not in a cost that we have anticipated, nor is it encumbered, nor do we have the money to be able to do that this year. So Dr. Goddard and I met, and we talked about certain ways, and that the way we think is the best is to end kindergarten on June 14th. That's 2 days before all the other students in our district are ended. This is typical. It has been done in the past. It was the procedure that was put in place in the past. Ooh, I'm like spitting on my microphone. That was the procedure in the past. And then the teachers who work contractually the Monday and Tuesday, they'll come in and do the screening on Monday and Tuesday. There is not a 180-day requirement for kindergarten students to go to school.
And the instructional hours are only 450 versus 900.
Correct. So we've met their instructional time.
Calendar rules are just different for kindergarten. In the past, when my kids went through it, they did that. School was off for kindergarten for 2 days, but it just happened in the middle of the year instead.
What we
instead
used
of the
to
last
do is we would
couple
cancel
days.
school and like in May, and not have them come for 2 days and do the screening now. We don't think that makes sense to cancel school now, but to have their school year end on the Friday, and then the elementary and middle and high schools are ending on the next Tuesday.
So, as a parent of an incoming kindergartner,
You will get a new screening time.
which is fine. I just want to know when parents are going to be notified of this, because a lot of
Tomorrow.
parents, such as myself, took the time off of work for the time that we've already signed up for a month ago.
Yeah, I understand. It's a hardship. I'm not saying that it's not a hardship, but I don't think we have the funds to pay the teachers
Oh, no,
to
I'm
be able to do
I
it
just
on
want
those
to make
ways.
sure
So we absolutely understand.
parents are fully aware
our
as soon as possible.
We're bringing it to you first, because we think that that's our responsibility to share with you, and now the public knows. We will send a letter out. Tiffany, Dr. Goddard is prepared to send a letter out and start that process of rescheduling those screenings.
It's not only that, it's the parents who have kindergartners who now need childcare on those 2 days too, right? I think the shift to summer camp is always hard, right? So this just puts 2 more days on the plate of those parents, of all the kindergarten parents.
But
I get it.
Yeah.
We're at the point of making really
yeah.
hard.
We're
we are
making
in the
hard
position of making
decisions.
impossible
Yeah.
choices, and you're identifying them, and you're making them, and it feels horrible for
No,
for
but
everyone
I do
to be in this
appreciate the
position.
amount of thought and effort and work that has gone into this. I'm sure it's a tireless and thankless job, but I want to say thank you, because I know this has been a huge undertaking.
Along those lines, I wouldn't have even
I
thought to
have more,
think
okay.
about
Yeah.
structures
There's
like
more.
kindergarten stuff. Like, are there any other things that you might not know now? Like, I just wonder, are there other things that we haven't anticipated that we usually do at the end of the year that cost us money that we need to then also look at?
That's what we have been doing the last,
Thank you.
seems like year, but it's probably been 2 weeks.
20 minutes.
That's what we have been doing. This is one of the big ones that we identified. So I don't
Thank you.
believe there are others at this point that we have to, but Marcy and I are meeting with the principals on Monday to look at any other further things like this.
I mean, they strike me as common sense and really thoughtful.
Are there different things like this, like especially as it relates to whether the spending freeze, the individual schools that might have student impacts? Would you think it would be appropriate or make sense to try to reach out to some of the PTOs to see if parents or the PTOs would be able to fill, because I know there's some just expenses, like the fun stuff at the end of the year and things like that, that there's a cost to, that parents may be, if asked, or the PTOs might be able to contribute more. I don't know if that would be
We've encouraged all of our
appropriate, or-
building leaders to meet
Okay.
with their PTOs, to meet with their PACs, and they have been wonderful. This is Teacher Appreciation Week. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the PTOs and PACs have been great about supporting the schools, and they're always great about bringing in supplies. Teachers are able to ask for those kinds of things. Principals, having been one, are pretty good, like squirrels. You know, we like to tuck things into our cheeks. So I suspect that every principal has some stash of some supplies. But, you know, we are sort of doing that phone tree thing right now, where if a principal needs something, they send it out an email. You know, our school needs oak tag. Who has oak tag? And the oak tag is being sent. I mean, we send an email from central office today saying central office needs paper. Who can lend us a box of paper? You know, kind of that good old neighbor, you know, going to your neighbor and I need a cup of sugar.
And Pam, I think, didn't you also indicate that there's, we're also doing some reductions on substitutes, right? That we're trying to be more economical about how we cover that?
We are trying to be more economical. So Greg Landry, who's the director of HR, and I met with a company today that we already use so twofold. I maybe you meant day to day, and I'm sort of thinking proactively. So we met with a company that we already use that is our management system for the teacher evaluation system as well as professional growth. Right now we have what I call as a sort of homegrown system for substitutes. So we employ one person in the building who is the manager of the substitutes. The buildings hire their own substitutes, that one person. So if I'm the manager and Alyssa needed to be out, she'd come and tell me I'd be out. I'd look on the list, I'd send them a text, I'd call them, I'd write it on a sheet. The sheet would go onto a piece of paper, the paper would come here, we'd pay them. So we're looking at something that might be a little bit more automated, so it's easier to keep track of all of our teachers' absences. It helps teachers keep track of their absences as well. And then substitutes would be hired from human resources, and so we have one pool for the district. That's sort of down the road. I don't know what that's going to look like for cost. He asked me what my budget was, and I said 0. So I asked him to come as close to 0 as possible. And then currently, we're looking at substitutes, and we've asked our buildings. So sometimes a building principal might bring in a substitute if you feel that you have some activity that's going on, that you might need an extra pair of hands in the building. We've asked them not to do that. We've asked them to reach out to us at central office. We have directors that have volunteered their time to go over to support within the school building. I think I said in my I don't know, at some point, you know, one of my things that I promised is when you call, we will come. So, you know, if they call me, I'm not above, you know, going to serve pizza. I'd actually prefer that some days. So we're doing that. And then one of the other things we've asked our principals to look at is sometimes we have a long-term substitute position for maybe a teaching assistant or somebody's out on medical leave or for another reason. They're paid at a slightly higher rate than the substitute pay is paid at, and so as we're looking at the end of the year, and sometimes we have some activities that don't require us to have the same amount of staffing that we need to have, if they find that they can end that contract with the long-term substitute, but just need to hire a sub for 2 days a week, that would be a considerable cost saving.
Okay.
Moving on, sorry.
No,
I
that's
think I'm
fine.
way over my time. The next slide just shows you that that's our budget, the $62,064,629. This reflects that amount of money that we moved from utility repairs and maintenance into the facilities account. This is a 5.5% increase. If you want, that is hot linked to the, Marcy, just click on it for a second. Oh. I'm sorry, Marcy doesn't have access. Sorry about that. It's hot linked to the spreadsheet, the spreadsheet. Ooh, she's so smart. To the spreadsheet that we showed you last week of the revised numbers.
Okay.
So FY25, just want to remind you, we're going forward with what we consider our preferred plan for reductions. So on the left-hand side, you see the additions or revenues that we've already talked about. We haven't really talked a lot about the increase in preschool tuition, and it is something that we're considering a revenue for next year in order to be at budget. So I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute, because you should be aware, and I don't know if that's something that you need to vote on in terms of increasing preschool tuition for next year. And in the same vein as kindergarten registration, we have already notified parents of their spot in our preschool program, and we have already shared with them the fee. So this would be another letter to them to share if we are increasing preschool. And then just on the right-hand side, again, shows you the reductions we made in terms of stipends. IT was able to cut another $40,000. The separation incentive program, which I'll just do a very brief overview, and then the reductions that we have planned. So the next slide shows you the preschool tuition. We're proposing a $200 a month increase. And so what that shows you is the different programs we have. We have a full day program. We currently charge $520 a month. That would take it to $720 a month. We have an additional program called Lunch Bunch where the students can stay. That's $420. That would go to $620. Partial inclusion, it's $320. And that one looks a little bit more than $200. It goes to $620 because we're also proposing adding Lunch Bunch to that program. That was a proposal that was already in place, I think, for next year. And then half-day program is $320. That would go to $520. And we have both AM and PM spots.
So there are big jumps to someone's pocketbook, but then looking at those and remembering how much I paid for private preschool, it's dramatically cheaper, because I think in my numbers a few years old, but it was like about $500 a week.
We looked. Dr. Goddard belongs to like not a consortium, but she works with the other preschools, and so we've looked at other fees. We will not be the highest. We will not be the lowest. There are other districts that are increasing their fees going forward for next year. I think we could do this in a gentle way if you choose to increase the fees, where obviously if a family has a hardship, we would not want to take a spot away from anybody that we've already accepted if finances are their issues. I wouldn't want to recommend that. Whether how we roll out the payment plan, or if there's hardships, if they can apply for the sliding scale for reductions.
And this is and because of the nature of the preschool program, our kids who qualify for early intervention still attend free. This is the other children attend to have peers and to make it a quality program. The one that I don't like charging extra money, but I understand why. The one that sort of just doesn't sit well at this point is the partial inclusion one, as being higher than everyone, and I get the necessity.
It's only higher because we're adding Lunch Bunch to them, where they've never had Lunch Bunch before.
So can you just define what Lunch Bunch is for people?
It's a social skills, essentially, opportunity. So is it adding time? I'm sorry, I don't know.
It's adding time to the day,
Yeah.
and it provides them lunch.
Right.
Where they would typically go home, now they're going to stay.
Yeah.
So the revenue from this is included in balancing the budget as a
Correct.
whole, right? So at this point, we don't have a choice about not doing it unless we cut something else. Is that?
Yeah, or, I mean, I
Well,
thought.
I don't think we should go down the road of, we'll just do it anyway and see what happens. We've tried that.
I thought a lot about it. I think we could send a letter letting parents know about a potential increase and what it might look like, depending on the volunteer incentive program. If it brings in more than we anticipated, then we have to go back and look at what's our first thing that we're bringing back, right? And so if maybe preschool tuition is something you would want us to not.
Maybe we could only go up by, if that goes well, maybe the increase is only $100.
Correct.
Could I?
As an example.
Mr. Chairman, is this an appropriate time to ask about what Pam just said? That I guess between now and June 25th, if I have the right date, this offer is out there, right?
It will be, I'm going to talk about that right now.
Oh, okay.
You want me to go there?
But I want to talk about the fiscal implications, but I'm happy
So
to
it's
do
until
it
June
either
15th.
now or to wait, whichever you prefer.
Well,
Why don't you keep going?
All right, I'll keep
Yeah.
going. So we have a volunteer separation incentive plan that we have signed an MOU with the all the bargaining units. So that would be our teachers unit, our teaching assistant unit, and our administrative assistants, unit. And so this plan will be has been shared with them. And so this plan is only open to full-time, non-appointed school employees in certain groups. It's an incentive to end their service with the town, so they can either they can either retire or they can resign. They agree that the separation is voluntary and they're unable to collect unemployment. That says have reached a tentative agreement.
Well,
We did.
I've signed it.
Yep.
It's-
It starts May 15th. It will end June 15th, but we have an option to extend it if we want to. It cannot go to a person who has already announced their plan to leave, and it does not get added to their base pay or impact retirement in any way. So there's a couple other clauses in there that's not on this slide, but so it will be, we'll look at seniority, years of service, so those people will be given priority first in terms of the incentive plan. So that will be looking.
So they can start applying May 15th, but decisions won't be made until after a certain date. So then we have a full picture of all the people who are interested, and then we can accept their application based on what those priorities.
Correct. So
we're
Greg,
surveying first.
we're surveying first. The survey goes out tomorrow.
Got it.
To ask parents, to ask staff if they're interested or they think they might be interested in this, and then let us know if they're going to retire or resign, because if they're going to retire, then there's some work that we have to do, human resources will need to do to help them to be able to do that. They have until August 31st, though, to retire.
So they can announce it, get the money, but not retire until August 31st.
Correct. And we will give updates to both all the unions as well as the school committee and the town as how many people are applying, because we'll want to know if the program is being successful, because we can say that this wasn't successful, it's not to our benefit, we're not going to do it.
What if people have already applied for retirement then? Can they rescind that?
Correct.
So it's not first come, first serve. It's some priorities you set. But we can't pick by building, if I understand right.
No, we cannot pick by building.
Okay, and so the questions I was going to ask are that sometime after June 15th, we're going to know how many people applied, and then we're going to decide how many to accept, if I understand right.
Correct.
And then we're going to make a final decision about how many positions to reduce.
Correct.
Okay. And at the moment, the budget is balanced with, if I'm not mistaken, 0 in contingency or reserve accounts. I'm just,
correct.
Okay, so my view is that that isn't quite enough. And that, I mean, if we cannot have happen next year what happened this year, and we can't go into the year with 0 money, so then the first question is, how much can we fairly think? We don't have our own reserve account, but we have access to the Finance Committee's reserve account. And if I understand correctly, I think the manager is thinking that we can count on it for special ed unexpected, which of course is probably one of the biggest categories and one of the ones that's hardest for us to anticipate. But there are other kinds of uncertainty, and as I say, 0 just isn't enough. So I am of the view that the number of positions should be reduced further than we need to do everything we've otherwise said, because otherwise we risk absolute chaos next year if something comes up and we have no money to cover it. And I think we need to make that decision. We can't make it tonight, but I would like to suggest that in our planning, shortly after June 15th, that you present us sort of the arithmetic and the options, and that one of the options in front of us should be how much of a reserve do we want and what does that mean? So we can't discuss it tonight because we don't have the data, but we can't really wait until August either. So I guess I'm really asking for agreement that that's something that will be open for discussion at the appropriate time.
I think I understand what you're asking for, and I think that's our plan, to share with you the amount of money that this is generating, and then making determinations about how we want to repurpose that money.
It sounds like we're in agreement.
Yes.
Good. Could I had another question before. So at that time, I would also like to reopen the discussion about, I know we haven't been talking about curriculum and all that, but what's going to happen is we're going to have fewer teachers and slightly higher class sizes.
Yeah. I don't want to, well, I do want to stop you, so I am going to for a second. I do think that's something that you have on the agenda to talk about in your new business.
Oh,
I
sorry.
think that's another
I guess
agenda
I was-
item. I'm still sort of trying
Oh,
to
no,
get
that's
through the
fine.
superintendent's
No,
report.
I'm fine with that. Go ahead.
Okay. Where are we? Yeah, so that's
That's the
the
school budget.
superintendent, that's the school budget. That's your update, that's where we are with that.
Right, so now we're on C.
Now we're on C. Goodness gracious.
We're just flying.
I remember to bring water with me. I want to share with you. Some things that make me happy and remind me of my teaching and learning job. So this year we had a math review. I don't have slides for this. This year we had a math review process in place. So the math review process really started in 2023, and our goal is to sort of bring it forward towards 2026. Benjamin Cabrera is our director of mathematics, and Kara Larkham is our director of STEM, and they have been leading this charge. And I'm happy to have them come back and talk to you at another time. But I just wanted to share that one of the reasons that we put this in place was to look at our math curriculum. It's been a while since the math curriculum had been reviewed. One of the things that we talked about, reasons why we would want to review our math curriculum. 59% of our students are meeting or exceeding expectations in math in grades 3 through 8. So I think it's 3 through 8. So if you think about 18 students or so in a classroom, there's about 8 students who are not meeting or exceeding expectations, and we don't think that's okay in North Andover.
I'm sorry, would you mind going through those numbers again? You were talking faster than I could understand.
Sorry, I have a habit of
No,
talking
it
fast.
wasn't a criticism.
59% of our students are meeting or exceeding
Sorry.
expectations.
59.
59. So if you think about a classroom of about 18, 19, so we have 8 students who are not, and we don't think that's acceptable.
Yeah, almost half aren't.
Yeah,
And we're talking which grade now?
3 through 8. Is it 3 through 8?
You said-
Yes. Yeah, MCAS, 3 through 8.
Oh, this is MCAS?
Yeah.
Okay.
We currently use Eureka Math in our elementary program. Eureka Math has only has partial standards through Ed Reports or through Curate. One of the reasons why it doesn't receive full support is really its accessibility to students. Its included supports are not specific enough to meet the needs of all learners, and the materials do not provide specific opportunities for English learners to develop academic language in English. And it's one of the reasons why, as we were doing our review. So Ben and Kara and their team have spent all fall really learning and preparing, looking at at the curates, looking at the Ed Reports, understanding what it means to go through a review. In the winter and spring, they did some investigation and some selecting of programs that we wanted to look more deeply at. We've had the people that sell the books, for lack of better words right now, come in and do presentations for us. We have done extensive site visits. We were looking at Eureka Squared, illustrative math, Envisions, and HMH math, I believe. It really came down to 2 programs that were really shining stars, meeting all of the needs of our district, which was Eureka Squared and illustrative math. And our committee has proposed a pilot next year of Eureka Squared. So we will move forward with a pilot, and we hope to bring to you next year a recommendation for adoption.
Can I ask some questions?
Sure.
Well,
And I'll be honest, Ben's not here tonight, and I'm happy to have Ben come. I just wanted to give you an overview because we're sharing with the teachers tomorrow that Eureka Squared and the process for piloting. And Ben was able to secure a free pilot with Eureka Squared, so it's no cost to the district.
So a couple questions that you might or might not be able to answer. First part is a statement. I'm glad it's Eureka Math Squared. I think the structure of that program and the explicitness that it has in terms of helping teachers do math centers and math talk and all those things and manipulatives built right in is a really great part of the program. So excited about that. In terms of pilot, I'm glad that it's free. And it would just be, as we go forward next year, like, thank you for making sure that you want to come to us to fully approve and adopt it. I would, as part of that, I'm sure you will share with us the cost of that we're currently spending on our consumables every year for
Correct.
Eureka Math Squared and what this new is going to implement, and the cost of PD. I think it'd be wise for us to think about, if it's the thing we are going to do, can we somehow wrap any of that into a capital request this coming, which I think the process starts in August for this town. Is there anything that would be a one-time cost or a first-year cost for curriculum adoption that we can put into our capital request to save on our operating budget? Would be amazing. And then my other question was, are we eligible, or did we apply for the HQIM grant? Because did we participate in the selection committee work with DESE, and can we apply for HQIM, or is that?
Sadly, we were not eligible to apply for the HQMI grant for math this year. But Ben has applied for an NCTM grant that we feel pretty confident that he's going to be awarded, which is going to allow us to create, to take the pilot teachers and be able to do some work with them after school and help them for them to be delivering some of the professional development to other teachers. We have a plan B if we don't get this grant, so that it can happen during the school days, because we haven't planned to pay them in any other way. So we're hoping that the grant does come through. And then in our PD calendar, which I'm happy to share with you at some point for the fall, for next school year, in our PD calendar, we have embedded in professional development to develop all of our teachers in math pedagogy and in Eureka Squared, so that when we hopefully adopt it, if it does do all that we want it to do, they will be ready to implement the next year.
And I imagine the math pedagogy training is going to be good regardless of what program.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's
Right.
just work that we need to do anyway.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
exciting.
Oh, goodness, I promise my reports won't be as long the next two meetings. I think that's what's left. Around the district, really quick. So we just want to say thank you so much to our teachers. It's Teacher Appreciation, and really schools embrace, yes, applaud, applaud. Schools embrace all staff during Teacher Appreciation. So, office staff, our, teaching assistants, everybody is included in that. And the PTOs and PTACs go out of their way. And this community has so many businesses that will support the schools and donate towards the luncheon. And in this time, that has been trying and uneasy for our teachers. I met with some teachers today in Bradstreet School, and our teachers are nervous and scared. And I continue to make a commitment to visit with schools who need to hear from us about what's happening going forward. They come to work every day. They care greatly for the children. They are working very hard, and they are trying so hard to be part of the solution to the problems that we have. So we thank our teaching staff. As you heard, it was also National School Nurses Day, and the middle picture is a picture of our school nurses, past and present. Once a school nurse, always a school nurse. Also want to share that the Thompson School participated on May 1st to walk, ride, and roll, which is part of the Safe Schools program, and I really think we should utilize Safe Schools a little bit more than we have been, because Safe Schools really fits nicely with the safety procedures that you saw today. They will come in for free. They will look at all of the traffic patterns in our schools. They will make recommendations for signage. We could work with the town for the signage that should be there. They might suggest different ways in terms of safety and security. They will come in. They have different programs for different grade levels. So I think at second grade, they will do a pedestrian safety class for all second graders. I know Mr. Cushion has done it because I've seen them at Kittredge School, and this is a really walking community. I think it would be great. They will come in, I think it's for 3, 4, and 5, and they will do bike safety. These are all free programs, and the more that we participate with them, the more that we are able to apply for other kinds of grants. I think some of the side, not necessarily for the school, this more would benefit for the town, but like money for sidewalks and things like that. So we will continue to encourage that work, but I do think it will go really hand in hand, and I heard you talking a little bit, Kelly talking a little bit about that signage. I know that I did it, and it was wonderful, and they will come in and just watch the traffic patterns and really give you some great information, and they work really closely with the fire and police department as well.
Yeah, I know, and I think it'd be great to do that, and just working with DPW and things like that. I know as I've reported signs in school areas that aren't working, it's hard to find who's responsible for fixing it and making sure that they stay fixed. So I think that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and they give you a really wonderful detailed report. I think you heard the Drama Guild had a Shakespeare at Midsummer's Night. That's happened already and very successful. I'm not sure if are there any more slides, Marcy? Oh, I just wanted to mention that North Andover Middle School had geography night, and I want to congratulate Assistant Principal Caroline Beasley, who took this responsibility on. She worked closely with Kristen Ando, our humanities director, and Georgia Gonzalez, the principal, and really changed geography night to be both geography but also heritage night. And so that students had an opportunity to learn about different heritages. Did you go?
I did.
Yeah, over 400 people participated. It was a wonderful night. I think it's really a model for our district and something that I'm hoping that Carolyn will share with us when we meet with our leaders this summer.
It was wonderful. The event, I think one of the best parts was the front lobby here, where they invited in families and students to do displays and share about their own cultures and heritage, to really invite people in to learn about some of the amazing things and amazing people that live in North Andover. But it was really fun to walk inside. I didn't get to go in the Globe because I had to let my daughter use my socks. But they said it was really cool, and there was great music, and we got to decorate cookies of Africa, doing some really fun geography stuff. It was amazing.
Yeah, and shout out to
for that globe, huh?
I know.
It was.
Right?
We had to wait some time.
You could go in that
You go in. It's from Bridgewater State, so their geography outreach program. But you go in, and it's painted on the inside, and they tell you all about the things that are going on from the in. The kids, my kids liked it.
Yeah.
Hannah and Carolyn had a great team, so we really appreciate the NAM staff. Everybody that was there that night volunteered their time. It wasn't part of their contractual time, and it was really well attended and a lot of effort. So it's really a model of a way of really looking at curriculum and embracing diversity in our town. And then I have to give one more shout out to the robotics team. As we all know, they came here and shared with us. Teams A and C went to Worlds. They did really well. One of our teams received the Think Award, which is a really prestigious award, and we had been visited by the governor before they went to competition, and then when they came back, Senator Tarr and Senator Feingold, as well as our representatives Nguyen and Ramos, came and congratulated the teams and brought them a citation. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam. Okay, chair's report. Okay. First, I want to, again, acknowledge our teachers. I think I was going to do that anyway, so let's give them a big round of applause for a great job in persevering through this with us. So we do really appreciate it. I never know where the cameras are to look at, but we do really appreciate it. All right, first item for me for chair's report, current SC committees liaisons. So I think I can fill in a few of these. So thank you to the committee for appointing me to take over on the school building Kittredge, so that's done. We have a bunch of open spots. Alyssa has asked to serve with Joe on policy, so I'm making that official tonight. Joe, you will remain on NAMS. I assume that's good
Yes.
with you? Okay, I've got Kittredge. We have, just as a matter of notice, I guess. So for the negotiations spots for teachers and teaching assistants, that was Andrew McDevitt and myself, so I'm still here, so I'm there. But if either of you are interested in that, it shouldn't really come again until
4 years.
4 years, yeah, 3 more years. However, I wonder if, like we just did, MOAs do come up from time to time, right? Does anybody know, do they need to have, I would think we need to fill the spot, I guess is the point. So if either of you are interested in that, you don't have to tell me right now, but let me know.
In which one is that?
This would be, I'm sorry, the negotiations with teachers and teachers as teaching assistants. The spots that are blank up there.
That's why I didn't notice it. Okay.
Okay.
While we're on that point, I just want to point
Yeah.
out, I think we need negotiations for food services as well.
Okay. So that's another opening. Okay, thank you.
Greg Landry's doing that on the school side.
Okay, good. All right. So I'm basically inviting Kelly and Ed to let me know if there's an interest in any of these. And at some point, I'm going to have to ask people to fill empty spots.
Okay. And as we look at these, I'm also thinking about what other ones we're going to bring forward. too,
Right.
Because we're talking about, I think it was the next agenda item, talking
Yes.
about FinCom, and then we still have the Special Ed Advisory Committee and things like that. So I'm
Yes,
kind
it's
of
all coming up.
thinking holistically as all of those.
Correct, and I'm going to get to that. So that's the subcommittees, the top half. For liaisons, we do.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
what about the fundraising?
Oh, sorry. Yes, there's also an empty spot on fundraising. That's to fundraising policy practices. So that's to keep in mind for future consideration.
It's not something I've ever done, but I can certainly, if I can understand a little bit about it, I could hop in. And
Okay,
is there a subcommittee for that? For fundraising policy? Like what is?
I believe there should be. I don't know if.
It's a
that
more of a-
Jim Mealy and
I was just gonna
Andrew were
s-
working with Steve Nugent.
Yeah, and then I agreed previously to step into that.
Oh, you
Oh, you did?
okay, you
Yes.
already got that one?
Sorry.
Okay,
If everyone
no,
really wants it.
No,
I got lost. I got lost
That's okay.
in my various versions of
I am not
this.
stepping on your toes, Joe. It's
No,
yours.
right.
All right, but there will still be spots for teachers, teaching assistants, and
Food service.
food services. Thank you. Now down at the bottom, the liaisons. Right now, I guess, Pam, you would be. Well, we should consider whether we want to put it this way. We should consider whether one of the 5 of us, would like to serve for Crest or SEAM. These are our collaboratives.
I'm sorry, I would like to serve.
Serve as the liaison to those organizations, to those collaboratives that we belong to. The superintendent's been in that role.
So it'd be a temporary.
It would be a temporary thing.
I would suggest that we don't have Ms. Lathrop do that right now.
I think that's a good idea.
And I think that might
Unless you
I
want.
will say
Unless
the
you want
SEAM
to.
Collaborative is very helpful. It's a very supportive group, and
Unless it makes you feel good to go.
yes, and we typically meet virtually. I meet with them in my other role as assistant superintendent. Marcy probably meets with them in her role as director of special education with each one. I don't mind continuing to do the SEAM one because it's a benefit to us. Like sometimes we'll pull resources in that way. Crest seems to be a little bit more board member-ish to me, that if somebody wanted to take on, I'd be okay with that.
Maybe, Pam, if you feel you can do some and not others, I'd be happy to do it on the times you can.
Okay.
So are you also interested in Crest, Ed, or?
Well, I thought that we belong to 2 collaboratives, right?
Right.
Correct.
No, the offer is for both of them.
Okay, so at least temporarily you'll help with that, okay. Alyssa, you're legislative liaison, correct?
No.
No. No one is. So that's an open spot, if someone is interested in that.
Yeah, I will take that one. I'm assuming
Okay.
there's definitions as to what these are.
Or they're in.
Okay, in the policy,
In the
okay.
policy. Okay, I'll put Kelly down for that. Alyssa asked to not be the PTO president liaison anymore, right?
Right, because
so
I was
that you
going to
could-
move up to policy.
Right, so we will need someone there.
I'll check my calendar, but I'm happy to go to the CPAC on May 13th if I'm not doing anything else.
Okay. So for now, I'm ex officio on everything, so I guess I'll consider myself the liaison to PTOs, at least for now, unless somebody else is interested. Health, I'm already there. Ed, thank you for that, for NACPAC for May 13th. And Joe, you have town.
And
I'm sorry, I can't. I would have been happy to do it, but I've already got a commitment. Well,
That's the night before a town
It
meeting.
usually started at
That's not a
7.
problem. It's that I belong to a men's group in Gloucester. What time do they meet?
It's at 6. Okay, 6.
All right.
That's this coming Monday?
It is.
I believe we were going to put in there
Actually,
too.
the 13th is not a Monday. Is it Monday the 12th? No, I'm sorry, that's the wrong year.
Are you looking at 2025? What happened?
I was looking at May 2025, Ms. Koenig. The 13th. I can do that one. I can go on to the CPAC.
Okay, so Joe, you have that.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
I believe Chair Brown, we were going to put me in as the liaison for CPAC, but the other attending member will be
Correct.
rotating.
So
Yes.
Alyssa
I'm
and
sorry,
somebody
who will
else.
be the liaison?
I
Alyssa
am.
is
Oh,
the,
you are the liaison.
yes.
But we have 2 members that attend, so I attend all, and then the other members rotate attendance.
All right, so Joe, you have May 13th though, yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and you have Town Diversity Committee?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so that's that. All right. B, we voted in executive session, so now we need to do a vote in public for the custodial contract.
Do we want to make a motion?
That would be great.
I move that we accept or approve the Custodial Association contract for, I don't remember the years, for the next 3 years.
Yes,
Yes, okay, do we have a second?
I second. Oh.
Okay. Is there any, I don't think we need any discussion, but do we?
Thank you, Ms. Koenig, for your diligent work in getting that settled in,
Yes.
I think, record time. But I really appreciate the hard work of doing that and the way it was able to come together.
Absolutely. They were a pleasure of a good group to work with.
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure.
All right.
And thank you to them for all the hard work in making our buildings,
Clean and comfortable.
even
Yeah.
with the aging nature of them.
Yeah.
The buildings, not the custodians.
I think that was understood. Understood. All right, let's vote. We have a motion seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Kelly?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
Thank you, Alyssa. And the chair votes yes, so that is now approved, and I can sign it. Okay. The next item has to do with our voting procedures. Member of the public, at least one, pointed out that we certainly have had a longstanding practice of taking, if we need to vote on something the first time we're examining it on the agenda, that we do a vote to suspend the rules before we actually take a vote. Based on the research that I've done and that the town council has done and the town manager has done, we're unable to find that in our policy or in Robert's Rules of Order, which is what governs if it's not mentioned in our policy. So I don't believe we need to retake any votes that we did that way. However, I do think it's a good practice that we should probably try to adhere to whenever possible. Although I'm not sure the proper terminology anymore is suspend rules, because I'm not sure there are rules we're suspending. I think what it would be our practices that we are suspending. So this is just
So
informational.
the normal practice is that we never vote on something on the first night it's on the agenda?
Unless we vote to vote.
But we don't have to
And there's
do
no
that.
reason we can't vote to vote?
Correct.
There's
It's
Just-
clear to me.
I'm just saying that, like, one implication of what was raised would be that we might have to go back and re-vote on some things we passed in the last few meetings where we did not take a vote to suspend the rules. I don't believe we need to do that, to re-vote any of those votes, because I don't think there are rules that we are suspending.
There
It's
is
just been
no
our
rule.
practice.
There's no
There's a
official rule.
practice.
It's just been our practice.
This is one more case where things were done the same way they were always done, but not for any guideline or rules of order or
Right.
mass general law.
And
Okay.
and in general, I think it's a very good practice that we should maybe codify somehow.
Just the emergency ones.
Oops.
Where's Donnie? Can you explain that
Is
one?
it time to go home?
Sorry. But I think perhaps this summer, maybe me and Ms. Koenig should sit down and look at the policies around operations of the committee. And I think it would be helpful to make a list of the types of things we can vote on the first time and the things where we do want to vote on after a second read unless we suspend the rules.
Or come up with some new term that.
Or some
Yeah.
other,
Yeah.
whatever it is, like, but
Yeah.
we should codify
An
that and
actual
make it
policy.
clear.
I agree. I think it's definitely something that your policy subcommittee should examine.
A very good idea.
so
I mean,
just-
the idea that we always have to do it means lots more meeting time.
Right, and I think some
Yeah.
of them, like routine, like overnight field trip requests or other things, like we never do it for minutes because it's consent time, like that we,
We agree.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so
Now,
just because
I-
it was past practice doesn't mean it was policy. Is what we-
Correct, exactly. Now,
Or
to be completely clear, I've been advised by town council that there are certain things where laws apply where you must do the equivalent of 2 reads. Right, so there are sometimes legal things where we do have to do that. But just generally, so it has been a practice, it's probably appropriate for us to continue. I mean, I think it's generally a good practice, but we have to have the flexibility to be able to vote on something fast when time is of the essence. So all of that was just informational, right? Okay. All right. Now, we have bids on our reviews that we want to conduct. And they're in your packet, and I emailed them out yesterday. No, yesterday.
Yeah,
Today?
it was
Yesterday.
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 It's
Things are-
blurring, but it was yesterday.
Yeah. So on the first one, which is the Municipal Resources, Inc., MRI, which is the personnel matter review, that one, I have to be, the suggestion is that like a not-to-exceed number for this one. And by the way, to remind everybody, the town manager has allocated funds to pay for these, so this doesn't hit our budget. Neither of these will hit our budget. But it's been suggested that the vote we take tonight be to empower the chair, to do I believe it was not to exceed the 6,500 that's listed on the first page.
It's hard for, I thought that was an impressive company from what I read about it. And it's hard for me to believe that they can do the job we have in mind for so little money. I certainly would not be unhappy if they did, but do I remember there was something in there that said that they reserved the right to come back to us
This is the
if they
personnel.
thought it wasn't enough?
Well, they want to, I think that the gentleman who represents them wants to ask some questions and get more clarity on exactly what he needs to do. So I think that's the reason.
So I'd be happy to move that we accept that one and just empower you to explore whether, and obviously you have to talk to the town manager about this, but whether that low number is really enough to get done the job that we have in mind.
And I just didn't know exactly what this, because are we talking about the municipal resources one,
Yes.
right? Because this, to me, didn't appear to be a statement of work, and it didn't really talk about the scope. Right,
Yes.
it just talked about
There's a
review
statement
of.
somewhere.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, there.
Where is the?
No, that's not, there's two,
There's
three.
two
there were
different ones.
Yes, there's two
Yeah.
different things here. The first
Uh-huh.
one is the personnel matter review. The second one is the financial
Yeah.
review.
So they're two we're thinking there'll be two separate engagements.
Correct.
we had-
Two
okay.
different
Yep.
service providers, right? One, MRI for the first one, CLA for the second one. In the case of CLA, they provided us with two documents, a master services agreement and a statement of work.
Yes.
The MRI people did not do that, I presume because they want to have a better idea of their scope.
Okay.
So I think what would probably be appropriate would be to, approve that limited amount to start with, and then if we need to do more, do more.
So I would like to move that we authorize the chairman to discuss with them and explore whether the amount that they've listed, after you've explained to them what we have in mind, whether that's sufficient, and if it's not, to explore with them and with the town manager whether we want to increase it.
So we have a motion. Is there a second?
Are you just moving that we give the chair the power to get further information, or for the company to start the work?
Both, but before it starts to work, they have to have a better understanding of what we have in mind. And when they have a better understanding, they may say, oh, now that we understand what you're thinking about, we need to ask for more money. And so I'm empowering him to do whatever he needs to do, to reach agreement with them about cost and product, and if that requires more money, to explore with the town manager whether she agrees that that's a useful expenditure. But I don't think, I guess I would say in answer to your question, Joe, that assuming he gets agreement, I don't see that there's any reason to bring it back to us for a vote. Or if that's what you want, you should amend my motion, or move to amend it, assuming it gets.
Well, I don't
seconded.
want to have to come back for a vote, because that's 2 weeks from now, and I
Right.
want it to.
Right, so.
Well, we could vote
He's ready to go.
on Tuesday. Oh, no, we don't have public session.
We do.
Oh,
We can.
so we can vote on Tuesday.
Yeah.
You're saying if, for example, they come back, if the determination in Tuesday, I don't know if we'll know by Tuesday, but.
Well, my motion is that I trust you to work this out.
I think we would just have to authorize the amount, and I don't know.
Can we have
Yeah, I
more
think the
discussion?
confusion or the issue is that, I think, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think you're raising the point that the amount might need to be more than this.
I think there's really no scope here for that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
we haven't stated a scope. So this is more kind of like, what I see this as, hey, we hear you, North Andover, you want us to do something. Here's roughly a number, but we really need to talk to you before
Yeah.
we'll even put a
Right,
statement
well,
of work together for you.
Yeah, what the
Right?
letter says is we could establish a cost not to exceed.
Yeah, but, yeah,
Mhm.
Right.
but without a scope, right? So we don't know. This is very loose. What happened?
So I think they need more information and we need more
Yeah.
information.
I guess my thought is, I trust you and the town manager to work this out. My motion is, we authorize you to work it out and not come back to us unless, in your judgment, you think we need to know.
Well, just going back to this, is this
Sure.
the only response that we've got?
It
to this
is,
map?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
As we look at these, and because we're gonna have two different firms looking at, their scope is gonna be two different issues, but they're related.
Yeah,
So I think it's making sure that there's awareness as appropriate with these two companies looking into things, that they do have a different scope, so we're not paying for the same thing twice.
right. Yeah, I think
that they dovetail in appropriately, because there's some dovetailing here that could add some complexities and honestly some additional cost for them.
So I think that's a really good question. My understanding is that, because I've thought that way at first too, but One of them is saying, how did this happen? And what is best practice? What should you think about doing to make sure it doesn't happen again? So this is more about process, and it's, their staff is like retired superintendents and people experienced in business managers. We're not asking them to audit the accounts. We're asking them to help us understand what happened and how to prevent it. The second one is allaying widespread concern that I think all of us feel, that is this really all of it? I mean, just having $1 million shortage showed up, you know, suddenly after a $2 million one showed up 2 weeks before. People are just uncomfortable, and that one is much more auditing, actually looking at the books to see whether, well, for example, the question I asked Pam, which is, does this mean, is there no implication for next year?
So, a couple of points. One is that, well, actually, maybe if I could invite town council to address us, I think she can help clear some of this up. Please.
Christine O'Connor, Town Council. So the difference between these two firms, first of all, for the accounting firm, that will be a much longer process where the accounting firm would be working with the superintendent's office and the town side as well. And it would likely take the entire summer. They'd want to conclude prior to the beginning of the school year, the financial audit. The other firm, it would be more of a straightforward personnel investigation. So even though, you know, the scope might not be exactly clear, for a firm like this, they would be utilizing their same methods of looking at essentially what happened in a particular case, and then interviewing people with knowledge and looking at policy manuals and really just giving a report as to the incident, how it happened, and whether it was consistent with the policies and practices that are acceptable for a school district. And that would be, the timeline for that would be much shorter. And it's not nearly as detailed as the audit, which is probably why the amount also is not necessarily significant, because the amount of time it takes to do that, again, would be much shorter in duration than the accounting firm.
Okay, so I think it just, I think you've allayed one of my concerns. I just want to confirm it, if I can. So looking at the one from Municipal Resources, it talks about personnel matters related to the 2024 budget deficit. So that's a shorter term one. You were just saying very focused, more high level,
right,
but doing some interviews. But then as I look over the statement of work from Clifton Larson Allen, the accounting firm, one of the main things they talk about is prepare summary of findings, including factors contributing to the current year deficit. So while those sound similar when I look at them, hearing your explanation though, they're coming at that same issue from different angles.
Absolutely.
So we'll get different information and facts,
yes,
from the different firms. Okay, so it makes sense that there's seemingly overlap, but it's not duplicative work.
Well,
That's right.
I mean,
Okay.
your point's really well taken. If
That's
there-
why I'm here.
I totally agree. I mean, if that's what they said, that is what you read. It sounds like the other. I agree. So
So
they
they just need to
understand
wait.
we're not asking them to interview people and say, why did you do this and how did it? We're just, as my understanding, we're just asking them to look at the invoices and the numbers. Is that right?
for the Clifton Larson.
Yes.
Yes, it
So
would be-
maybe, I think
They
Kelly's
would-
got a good point, that maybe that wording needs to be sharpened, so they don't spend time on repeating the stuff that the first firm has done.
They would still likely be meeting with individuals and on the school side, but they're looking at our practices and what sort of financial safeguards are in place. And in order to do that, they would be meeting with individuals. It's just that their focus is somewhat different.
They'll also have those results of that
previous one.
And they will.
Oh, yes, they'd have that to build. So I think maybe that's something that gets built in the statement of work that we'll be providing. They'll have an input from another engagement and they need to use, to build
Oh,
up. So they're
CLA
not
would have
I'm not
input.
sure
They're
legally we
duplicating
could share
work.
that.
Oh, well, maybe if there's facts, if there are things that we can share, so that they would be able to use those as, findings of fact.
Yeah.
If the things we can share, right?
Back to Mr. Moskovich's original motion. So it seems like I think I understand what you were saying. We want to empower the chair to clarify statement of work with the firm and authorize him to finalize a contract of up to $6,500. And then, if necessary, you'll come back to us. That's what you were trying to say?
Yes.
I agree with that, so I can second it.
All right.
Thank you.
If you don't mind staying, I have a question about CLA, but right now we're talking about MRI, so.
Well, I guess it's an interesting question. It's really urgent that we start this. If the chair feels like 8,000 is really better, and the town manager agrees, I would certainly not want to have to wait till the next school committee. So I guess my intention is slightly different than
So
what
can
you
we
said,
amend
Joe.
the motion to authorize the chair to work with the town manager to clarify the scope and to enter a contract at an appropriate amount?
Right.
That they see fit.
Fine with me.
And you'll report back to us.
Of course.
Great.
All right, so we have an amended motion now. The
Do I
amendment,
second the amendment?
yes, please.
Sure, I'll second his
All right.
amendment.
And well, you accepted the amendment, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we have an amended, seconded motion. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, let's vote. Kelly?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay. Now,
That was only the first one.
correct.
Okay.
Now, question, I guess we're discussing even though no one made a motion, but I'd like to ask, this one, I don't see any sort of not to exceed number or anything in the second one, the CLA.
The not to exceed for CLA that they have proposed is 25,000.
Okay.
It's a much bigger number.
And if during the course of their work, it appears that wouldn't be a sufficient number, then they would let the town and the school committee know in writing, and you'd have to make a decision as to
Whether to proceed or not.
whether to proceed or not, and whether, however much more it would be, whether that's something that you'd want to do.
Okay, so that's an understanding that we have reached with them, even though it's just not here, that's all.
Right. Right.
Oh, wait, no, it is, there it is.
Yeah, it says
I just found
25.
it,
Yeah,
it's
it's
on
in there.
page 3.
Yeah.
It is there, okay, thank
It's
you.
buried in a paragraph. It's below the,
Yeah, I see
the
it.
resource rate table.
Yep, I see it, okay.
So
I feel better now.
So I do have some questions about the scope on this one, since there is
Sure.
scope here.
Yes.
So there's a line in here that it talks about it says, what we'll provide, we may provide to you, it says that your management agrees to assume all management responsibilities. Do we know what that is? Are we assigning a project manager? Are we responsible for it's right under the scope of professional services on the page 1.
Oh, in the
statement of
MSA,
work.
in the MSA.
No, the statement of work.
Oh,
I'll be honest, I spent more time on the statement of work than the MSA, to be honest. I figured the MSA was more kind of boilerplate, legal, languagey kind of stuff, but, on the statement of work. So I think that's just something, Dave, as you talk to them, like, what are they looking and what are they expecting, knowing how much members of the administration are taking on right now, we need to
Yeah.
understand what the demands are as they're talking about who's taking on what management here. Might be very valid, but I think just going in, knowing what what does our responsibilities mean would be key.
okay.
Just kind of having that resource plan, who are they gonna need access to and when, I think is important. And then the next word list under, the special services, where the last item in special services, that last bullet, where it talks about recommendations for process improvements for future budgeting and financial management.
Yep.
I honestly think this is probably one of the most important go-forward items for us as a school district and as town and school committee. So I think this is one that we need to make sure gets, beefed up a bit. Any of the recommendations, they need to come in a priority order in terms of impact and effort, as we're talking about making. There's a lot of changes in a lot of different areas we're all talking about making. We need to realize we're not going to boil the ocean, so we need the experts to tell us which one, at least suggest. We can always change that order, but what are the ones that are going to give us the biggest bang for our buck, to be honest? We also need those recommendations to indicate where are we not in alignment with state law and guidance, right? What are the things that we have to do? Are there any or not, versus what's best practices? I think we need to look at that both from the state perspective and the town perspective. So, what are the things that we have to do versus what are the things we should be doing? I think I'm assuming there's going to be some things in both categories.
Do you think that's more appropriate for the second study or the first?
I think it was more appropriate for the one we're talking about now, for the Clifton, based on the scope, because it says they're going to prepare a summary of findings, including recommendations for process improvements for future budgeting and financial management.
Well, can I ask, maybe town council would know better, this firm, do they have any type of specialty in looking at school committee budgets where they would know the laws, or is this a general accounting firm?
No, they have experience doing school districts and doing this exact type of review. In fact, they're doing it right now with a lot of different school districts.
And do their reports typically include recommendations in a priority order?
Their reports would include recommended practices in terms of a priority order. I don't know offhand. I would assume
We can ask for that.
Exactly. That's
anyone who's gone in and kind of done process improvement, looking at things, if you're coming in and doing those things, you can always just hand over a list of 100 things,
Right.
or you can come in and at least say, what are the top 10? Maybe you don't rank all 100, but what are the there should be a way to say which ones will require 1 day to do, which ones will require 2 years to do, and then which ones are exposing us to more risk.
Is that something we should
less risk.
identify now in the scope of work?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the things I'm listing. I think we need to say these in our school. The recommendations need to include a recommended priority order. They need to include which ones in that priority order, it should build in, which ones are we not following state law and guidance? Those types of things. We also need to get ownership for the different pieces of the process improvements. Where does it fall? If they can do that. Well, some of it might be our choice. If it's our choice, then no. But if there are things that, based on Mass General Law, where it belongs, then we need to get that information. I think it's also would be important in this statement of work, if they look at it, consider a standard RACI for some of this. And it might already exist, but who's responsible, who's accountable, who needs to be consulted, and who needs to be informed, as we're talking about these process improvements as we're going forward. This is our opportunity to really have this examination, and we need to get as much as we can out of this, in my opinion.
So I think I captured all that.
I can send you, I have my notes here. I can
Okay.
send you just what I read off. I had just typed up before.
Oh, okay. So the question, though, is this a signable form? Is the way they presented it to us?
Yes, it has a
It
signature,
is,
yeah.
so I would be asking for a modification, right, is what you're asking for modifications to it.
Just more detailed scope, they talk about it. I think it's really easy to get disappointed and not have these things mentioned. It also doesn't talk about what form they're giving it back to us. They talked about, I think, a report back to you. Does this mean that they're not coming to the committee meeting? Are they not coming and representing and having us a chance to ask questions? So I think that's important too. Do we want them to come into a forum? There's a cost to that, so we have to decide if that's what we want, but do we want them here to be able to, interact with, with the school department, with, with school administration, with us at any point?
Well, they're clearly going to do
Well,
that in
to
their
get to the
interview
report.
process.
So at the end, when they have their
Yeah.
recommendations, are they just handing, this doesn't tell me, are they just handing this to you?
Right, what's the
And
deliverable?
walking away?
What's the
Yeah, or are
deliverable?
they spending
Yeah,
an
okay.
extra 10, how many of our hours coming to present, and, even by Google, and allowing us to ask questions more than once? as we go through and think about this. I
Okay.
think that's really important versus us trying to consume a 100-page report in details, right?
Okay, so, in terms of getting this going fast, I think you've dealt with this firm before?
I have. yes.
Okay, so what do you think is the best way for us to proceed? Would we want to ask them to amend the statement of work and then, this way, and,
Yeah,
what's-
you could ask that these details be added to the scope of work. I think generally they would, there would be an expectation that they would come and deliver the report via in person or, through Zoom. And I think a lot of the things that we've talked about tonight, are things that probably would be included in one way or another in the report, but just, making sure that they're gonna be there. And it may be that, there may be, after you get the report, there may be further work that you would find helpful that they do. But at least you get the initial report as a means of going forward, and certainly as a necessary first step.
And a question on their financial reporting. I know it's not to exceed for 25,000. The expectations that might take all summer. So, if they start reasonably soon, let's say they start in June, July, August, that's 3 months. I didn't see, maybe it's in the MSA. Are they reporting on their financials once a month so we know what we're consuming? Like how are they handle that? Because I'm assuming it's a time and materials not to exceed, right? So are they reporting? How do you guys usually handle that on contract, when we do contracts like this? Do we see monthly financial reports from firms as they're working through?
Well, you'd likely see billing. So after any, whether it's Clifton Larson's or another firm, as they are doing work, they are sending in bills. Normally, our contracts will provide to get it paid within 30 days' time. So you would be getting that.
Yeah, so there's really no, so that's a gap too, of not just getting a bill that says, hey, we consumed 10,000 of your dollars this month, pay us now, is different than getting some kind of, hey, yes, we've consumed $10,000 and we are 1/3 of the way through your work, so we feel like we're on track and we've done this for you. It's just something to think about as we're engaging in time and materials agreements with vendors. Like, that's just good practice to make sure that we're seeing where our money is getting consumed, and we can make judgments if we think we're on track.
Mr. Chairman, maybe it would make sense to relieve your workload a little bit, since Kelly's suggestions make a lot of sense to me. You work on one, let her do the other, because those are really good questions.
Yeah, I'm just trying,
I've written a lot of these on my side.
okay.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, but the question,
I can share my notes with you. Like, I've got my notes. That makes it easier.
yeah, I'm just, again, when I'm driven by just wanting to do this with speed, like, I want to make this happen soon.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
so,
agree.
so I'm trying to think about how do we proceed here.
I don't know how you intend to, if you're talking with them, if you're meeting with them, if maybe you can schedule a call with the two of you on it.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
That
there's
maybe
just
just to satisfy ourselves that they're going
Yeah,
to proceed the way that we think they will.
And to council's point, the stuff I'm asking for, this is bread and butter
Right.
consulting items that you stick in here, but you just put them in so everyone has clear scope and expectation.
So I think if we, well, I'm trying to form a motion in my mind that we can pass, right, that would allow this to start.
Well, given that this one's gonna take a lot longer, I feel like, is it possible for you two to work together between now and Tuesday, and we approve a final scope of work on Tuesday before our town meeting?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I feel like this one might be,
Okay.
we have a little bit more
Leeway.
wiggle room versus the other one.
All right, so I can take that action to, does that sound reasonable? I mean, can we,
What does this mean? We're gonna come to,
We always have a meeting before town meeting,
So I have in my calendar that I'm going to show up at 6:30.
Yes.
Is that correct?
We usually have a meeting before town meeting in case there's something, just held in reserve in case we had a.
I just,
Yeah, I'm
all I
just
need to
explaining the
know
practice.
is
Yeah. So we can have this on the agenda for that
at 6:30.
at 6:30. And they have a
Okay.
separate room set aside for us, and it can be a public.
We've even been in it, I think.
Yeah, we might want to start a little earlier if we're going to talk about this, no?
We can.
Yeah, we probably should maybe.
We have to send out the agenda tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah, so maybe I'll call it for 6 o'clock, so that we have a full hour, right, before town meeting starts.
Yep.
Okay,
I'll be there at 5 for my county duty.
okay. For your what? Oh.
I'm a counter. I'm one of the official counters.
Oh, okay.
As a new member,
Yep.
I get to count hand vote.
Oh, all right.
So I'll
Just
be
the
there at
stage.
5.
Lucky you.
Yeah, just the stage.
Just a stage.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so there's no action, that's the action that I'll take, but we're not going to vote on anything tonight then.
And then you and I can work together on.
Right, but so, as long as you're sitting here, we should probably set up a call, right, with them?
Sure.
Maybe tomorrow if possible? Okay.
Right, we can work good.
We'll work
talk
the scheduling
to-
out
okay.
outside, yes. All right, we're still in the sheriff's report, oh my God. But I'm almost done. So this next thing, this is the last thing on my report, which is not here, but I just have to announce it. So unfortunately, Dr. Mealy is out on medical leave for an indeterminate amount of time. So I just needed to make sure that information is shared with the public. That's why he's not here tonight. Okay, that concludes the chair's report. If the committee would permit, I feel like we have some guests here that are very patiently waiting, and that probably we should talk about what I think they're likely interested in, and maybe change our order if you guys are okay with it. Which is what I'm asking is if the committee is okay with taking new business part C out of order.
Yes.
Do we need to vote to do that? No. Since no one objects, I'd like to do that. Okay? All right. So what I have is a proposed, I think I'm doing this right, somebody correct me if I'm not, a proposed makeup of and to get the right words, this isn't, bear with me, I gotta wake my computer up. I want to give it the right title. Okay, this is under policy BDF. BDF. Oh, there it is. Someone's reading my mind. Yes, we are going to form an advisory committee to the school committee, subject to that policy that you see presented on the screen. What I think we need to do tonight is to agree on the composition of that, and so that people can start applying for positions on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a proposed composition that I took the trouble to print out, so there are copies for everybody. And if you guys, yeah, to the folks back there. I can spare another one if everybody wants. It's pretty simple.
Where would you like a copy?
I'll share with Joe.
Okay. Well, this is not that though. This is a proposed makeup of the committee. And here, Marcy, here's another one. So, and I'm certainly open to other options, but this is where I started. So, I thought we should have 2 school committee members in there. One should be the chair of this. We should have the assistant superintendent for teaching and learning, the director of special education, a special ed teacher, a general ed teacher, 2 CPAC board members, a special education parent, and a general education parent.
Can we suggest some additions?
Absolutely. And we're just discussing now, right?
I think I would love that the special education teacher, perhaps we could have up to 3 so that we can get perspective and information or ideas from middle, elementary, and high school. I also think that would be great to have the appropriate teaching assistants represented.
Okay, yep. So would you suggest how many TAs?
The vast majority of our
Let's do one
TAs.
at a time. Let's start with the teachers. You want 3 special ed teachers, but only 1 general ed teacher.
I hadn't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
Ms. Bacuzzi, most of our TAs are in the elementary and middle. Do we have a?
No, I mean, I'm ABECC through pre-K through 5 would be the majority of our TAs, and then middle school after that. I mean, I think. I think teaching assistants are important, but I think general education teachers and special education teachers, based on numbers, are probably more of a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
considering also some of the recommendations that were made.
yeah, and I think it's, if you wanted to divide them up in the sense of someone, pre-K through 8 or pre-K through 6 and 8 through 12, I would think about it in that sense. So,
I think for general ed teachers, I'd like to have. I think it's important to have a elementary, middle, and high school teacher involved.
So
As
3 and
well.
3
3.
instead of 1-1. Okay.
So while you're at it, it needs to have principals, at least one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just one, if I could just throw this out there, the only thing I'm a little worried about is as committees get bigger, right, they become harder to manage and be productive. So we should keep that in mind too.
And I would just say too, as we're building the committee and the number of people, kind of keeping the goal of the committee, which I think maybe was probably another thing we've got to talk about, what's the goal? And then just really tactically, when are they going to be meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Because are they meeting during the school day? Are we, and I don't know how this works with having educators, and is there a cost to this? Are we asking people to volunteer their time? What are we, so just that we need just to keep that, as we're building this very important committee, that we make sure we think just about the logistics and how this will work, and is there a cost involved, and what are we asking people to do?
Yes. Yep, no, it's good. These are good points, and this is the reason why I want to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, as I was thinking about this, what I had in my mind is like we want to try to implement what we received, right? We received a report, had a lot of good suggestions in it. We want to put a committee together to try to implement those, or at least implement as many as possible, right? So that's in my mind anyway, that's the goal.
Could we take the good idea that making sure we have teachers or principals at each level and combine them, but as you said, Mr. Chair, having 3 regular education teachers, 3 regular special education teachers, and 3 principals would make this unruly. So maybe we can work out a way of having each level represented by a principal or a teacher, but not necessarily both. And I'd ask Pam for your view on this. The recommendation that was made, which is try to get more work with kids who need extra help done in the regular education classroom, is likely to make more difference in elementary than high school. Correct? I mean, if you disagree with me, feel free to say so.
no.
But if that's the case, that might help us think about how to make the committee manageable.
I think the work needs to be done. I hear what you're saying about that, but I still think the work that needs to be done is at all levels.
Okay.
I
That's
think
why
also.
I'm happy.
I think skilled facilitation can mitigate any unruliness, but I think it's really important that not only do we have voice from all levels, both elementary, middle, and high, but we have voice from different roles in those levels, because a teacher's experience and a principal's experience are very different. And I think it's also important that people be involved in the process, so that when the committee does make recommendations and sets forth plans, then prioritizes things, that everyone walks away with understanding how we came to that position and then having played a role in it. So it's as important to help make the choice as it is then to help implement the choices themselves. So I don't worry as much about largeness as making sure that as we do this work, we have all the right people there to help do it in the future.
I mean, another suggestion is that I think because my mind, I think, went to more so of, I think people are going to want an outline of what you're actually looking for them to do to be part of a committee before we have a committee. So like envisioning something like a smaller amount of people, you know, you're going to do some building-based work, right? So that's where you're going to maybe capture some of your larger groups. But I think you have to outline what it is the committee's going to do before we decide who's going to be on a committee that, when we don't, I mean, I get in a big picture, but that was a really big picture, a really big picture.
So maybe we chunk it up first, like the first phase, like is the first, just I'm throwing things out there, but like the first 3 months is prioritize the list, right? Like that's, if I remember that report correctly, it was a lot of stuff they weren't prioritized.
Or working with general education.
Yeah.
Then working with special
Yeah.
education,
Yes.
and then maybe putting some pieces of those things together.
Yeah, so
Because I mean, 28, you know, I think, because I have the same feeling, those people need to be there, but that's a lot of people, so
So you're suggesting that maybe we go in phases, if I'm trying to understand, right? So
I think there's lots of different ways you could approach it, but I think the most important thing is that you're gonna capture the audience that you wanna capture. I think you need to capture the audience of, I mean, it was, as we all heard, it was a special education report that spoke a lot about general education needs. And so, you know, we're gonna have a committee, but we're also we're looking for buy-in, we're looking for communication, we're looking for all those things. So it's a matter of how the expectations of we're having, you know, few people do, it's gonna be a lot of work. So I think it's gonna be defining the roles of the people that are in the group. But I feel like taking a smaller group and really getting to the larger school. Again, a day at Franklin, meeting with the teachers, a day at, you know, we want to capture a lot of people in this to have discussions with.
Right.
But whether or not they want to, I think people are going to need to understand what we're asking them to be part of before they are going to want to be part of it.
As I read the report, the recommendations are more about regular education than about special education. And therefore, if we want to have a smaller group, I'd say add maybe just the 3 levels for general education teachers, and not, at least to start, to special education teachers, and 1 principal. And then maybe that's enough for starting.
I get that, but also I think what the report made clear to me is that there needs to be a mind shift in terms of like how we approach special ed, and I feel like that has to include special education teachers too.
Yeah, I don't read it quite that way. The mind shift is in regular education. It says your job is to meet the needs as much as possible of all kids, regardless of whether they're on ed plans or whether they're not. And so the regular education teacher's job changes a lot. The special educator's job is pretty much, and it's not a criticism of anybody, but the special education teacher is someone who has special knowledge about how to handle children who have certain difficulties. And we need those services no matter what. And ideally, they'd be delivered within the regular education classroom instead of separately, but the job is not going to change anywhere near as much as the job of the regular education teacher.
I don't know if that's necessarily true, because it's a cooperative effort.
I think if we're changing the nature of what education looks like in the classroom, the people who are all the people that are in the classroom need to be part of that conversation.
Yeah,
Sorry, Ms. Koenig.
I think what Ed is saying is correct in terms of the outcome of the report. I agree with it, but I feel like the special education teachers, you know, that collaboration and that I don't know there's a way to get away from having multiple special education teachers and multiple general education teachers as part of this conversation. I think it's just appropriate. I think they're going to want to be part of this conversation.
Yeah.
They should want to be part of this conversation. Like the expectations that they're going back to their buildings and having these conversations, these larger conversations that can happen. But that's, you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask
Well,
you.
I think that it's tricky because it's working in tandem with some of the work that we're already doing. So I'll give you a for example. So for example, we are looking at the scheduled day. So I'll just talk about elementary. We're looking at the scheduled day of an elementary classroom. So when I was working with, when our humanities director and I are working with the principals, we have in mind the special education review and also the fact that we are made a commitment to having 16 less teaching assistants in our district next year. And so we are trying to build a elementary schedule that will also allow for the collaboration, which I think was a big piece that was missing, that the report said was missing, was the collaboration between special education teachers and general education teachers in order to support students in the classroom. And wanting, when possible, having more special education teachers sort of co-teaching and working collaborative with the general education teacher, as opposed to a teaching assistant in the classroom and children receiving services outside with a special education teacher. I guess my point is what's tricky about this is that there's work that's already happening in the district based on some of the things that came out of the special education review, also based on some of the things that were my own personal goal as teaching the assistant superintendent for teaching and learning, and good.
So
and
there's an MTSS group.
There's an MTSS group that's already working. I'd love at some point to be able to come and present. I know the school year's wrapping up, but I'd like to present to you what what we call as our big three in terms of our big three goals, because we really tried to incorporate some of the work from the special education review and looking at our big three goals for next year. So I guess I'm going to just sort of echo what Marcy said. I think you have to know what your advisory committee is doing before you start putting people on the committee. And is it?
Actually, I'd be happy to hear from them if you guys are good with it.
No, I absolutely am, yeah.
Does anybody, no objection? Sure.
Yeah. Just one second, but just as they're coming up. So I kind of, I agree that we need, I think it would be helpful if we could more closely define what the goals of this committee are before we try to fully staff it. So just as an idea, could we create more of a core committee at first, right? Because we need to get started, right? We can't keep deliberating and waiting. So is there like a core group that we know would be there, and maybe that core group, their initial work is define, let's get a page of goals down so then we can shop, they can then be charged with shopping around for the rest of the members. And maybe like if we know the members that are going to be there, they're part of defining that goal list. And then we bring in the rest of the members and define them. Just as a thought.
Sounds good to me.
Just thought. Okay.
So that's exactly what we've spoken about internally at CPAC. Trying to.
I'm sorry,
Let's start with, for the record,
who you are. And,
sure.
Yeah.
Sasha Weinrich, 21 Sawyer Road,
Thank you.
the current president of North Andover Special Education Parents Advisory Council.
Lauren Stedman, 575 South Bradford Street, Vice Chair of CPAC.
Thank you.
So what we have kind of discussed, and I think how we've envisioned and hoped that this would go, is that there would be a group, and we've kind of, I think during public comment, listed some of those folks, but that would then review the presentation that was given, talk to the most important stakeholders, develop the approach and what that should look like and how it should be handled, and be given the authority by the school committee to then choose other members and perhaps it's subcommittees that then deal with this monstrous, scope of things, right? This is pretty significant. Yeah. And so that was, I think, what we discussed. And there's some things that the report, perhaps, in our opinion, didn't touch on, or they're missing pieces that we think really need to be discussed. And so that would also get identified by that initial core group. And then this is a lot of legwork. And so in my opinion, and I have not discussed this particular piece with the rest of our board or our members, but it doesn't, to me, I've seen other committees in this town where you have just this one
initial set of folks that are appointed, and then once they decide on a scope, they go away. I think in this case, it is so much work, and you're going to gain so much information and knowledge about a very specific topic that it would make sense for those members to stay in place and then have conversations about what those additional members' positions should be, or whether they're termed a subcommittee or whatever you would probably advise Pam and Marcy. But that would be, I think, a really effective approach.
The one thing I think might be mechanically is we could start with the list we have here with the mission of clearly defining the scope and goals, and then also make a recommendation to the school committee of what other members might be necessary, because the chair has to officially then appoint them, just according to the
Makes
policy,
sense.
right?
Yep.
But that might be the best way to get started, and to figure out like what is it that we know we want to have a group look at these things and make some recommendations, but we can't quite define it right now. But the group should do that and set a mission out at first. This seems like a sufficient list of people to do that thing, and then then they come back and say, this is what we want to do and this is who we need here.
So essentially, this, as I drafted it, would be the core group or the starting group?
Well, I would agree with that only if you include a principal. You
Yeah.
can't.
Right.
You can't do it without them.
But would we have to, I love that idea to get things going. Would we have to assign, I'm all for saying this is the initial list, like we go, but would we have to assign, or would the chair have to nominate people into all of those roles to get started? Like if we just wanted to get that core group going with, let's define it,
So-
and then to Pam, I love Pam's idea of once you have that goals, then figuring out who to bring on board, like who's got the skill, who's got the knowledge, who's got the skill sets, who's got the.
So
the
to answer your question, if you look at number 4 up there, right, appointments to such committee will be made by the committee. That means this body, not by me, not by the chair. I suppose you could empower me to do it, but the way the policy reads, we have to make the appointments, and any staff members that are on it have to be appointed or appointed by the superintendent, recommended by the superintendent, and approved by the school committee.
I also think there needs to be more discussion, because obviously we're not on the same timeline, right? Like, so schools, we had this report, it was months ago, we're talking about structuring, it was an all-day meeting, we're talking about structuring, we're talking about hiring, we're talking about all those things. So I think coming back to the table, to what we said earlier of, what is already, these are the things that are already in place. So I think that there's likely, hopefully, some boxes that we can check pretty quickly around some of the recommendations that are, again, already in process. Like we talked for a while, I think, the health literacy, like for example, that's already a group that we're working with. It aligned great with some of the recommendations from the report. So again, I think some of those boxes, we might be able to get through this quicker than we feel like initially. Then again, it is a lot of things to consider. But again, a lot of things have already happened and were already happening prior to that too. So maybe being able to define it better and talk about it more, but a lot of those things are already in place. So we're not in a bad place, in terms of starting something like this. So. I'd be okay. Again, I totally agree with the principal aspect of it. With starting with the core group, I'd like to see an additional teacher and an additional special education teacher, if that's possible. I just don't think one is an appropriate representation in a teaching assistant. So I don't know if that is too much for people to start with, but I just feel like a preschool teacher does something very different than a high school teacher. So.
What about SLPs and OTs as well? Because they touch some of our kids and help them navigate the world of evaluations and testing that does occur. So regulation, different things like that. I think also that's something to consider, because one of the things I've shared and I shared with Marcy and Pam after was the profoundly impacted students I felt were a little left out of the audit. Some of the recommendations about integration are wonderful, but for children, I'll just speak of my own, they wouldn't be able to function in just throwing them into an integrated classroom. Those paras, those TAs are very important to how they stay regulated, how they learn, and how they engage. So looking at all different subsets of special education, and those OTs and SLPs are crucial.
And, yeah, no,
they are. They
are.
touch.
And and again, we gather information. We have vendors, right? She came in, those are the recommendations, but then we take the recommendations and we do what's appropriate. What I can say is, and this is, we're always going to be differences of opinion. It's not a left out group. That is the belief system about all students. So like she made it very clear in conversations with me when she's talking about inclusion, she is talking about exactly, what you were talking, there's another side to that conversation from other families, so.
So Sasha and I had a discussion about this, and I just want to underscore what she said, that to some extent, they're two interrelated but somewhat separable aspects. There are parts of this that have to do with our children now on education plans getting what they need in an effective way. And then there's another part, which is how are we going to change the regular education classroom? And those discussions don't necessarily involve the same people. So her idea about subcommittees makes a lot of sense to me, which comes back to the idea of get a relatively small core group, have them sort of lay this out, and then once it's laid out, it might make more sense to think about where you want additional people. So it's not like I'm disagreeing about various voices, but I think it'd be unmanageable if you put all the voices in at the beginning. It makes sense to stick with the slightly expanded core group, sketch it out, and possibly think about 2 subcommittees or 3, and then come back and finalize it.
Okay, so I think if I'm reading the room correctly, where we're landing is a core group to begin, add the one principal to it, right, to what I initially laid out here. So for the beginning, it's just one special education teacher and one general education teacher.
Well,
Am I understanding that right? Or 2? Or you're thinking 2?
I mean, I can't see having.
One doesn't do it. Okay.
More educators with the group.
No, I have to go with the professionals' opinions here. I would absolutely agree. So it's 2 and 2? I'm just trying to capture it.
Yeah. Yes, that sounds
Yeah.
good.
So just to be clear, what was originally written here, except will be 2 special education teachers, 2 general education teachers, and 1 principal added to that list. So if someone would like to make a, since the chair cannot create it, the committee must create it.
The issue I'm finding here is, yes, you are completing number 4, but we are completely skipping over number 6 of the other things that we need to implement on this initial advisory committee.
Okay, yeah. So let's look at that. Okay. Well,
The length of time we can say could be, we can't be more than a year, right?
Yes, it will
Right.
be 1 year unless the member is reappointed. So
Yep.
I would say a year.
A year.
Right. Yeah.
Assignment of the school committee, for this first part is to clearly define the scope of the advisory committee
Well,
and make recommendations
map
about.
out- It's not, the scope of the committee size and content is a function of the scope of the work as a whole. It's not separate.
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Are you anticipating this committee starting immediately? Are you anticipating this committee starting in the fall of 2024?
It's a good question.
Immediately would be very difficult.
Yeah, I think
Immediately
immediately would be very difficult.
We've been asked to.
Waiting
not
would also
focus.
be
Yeah.
difficult. What's the,
So it's late, and if I remember reading rules about school committee meetings, it says you shouldn't make major decisions or have important discussions late at night because you may not have clarity of mind, so I'm just going to put that out there,
Yeah.
that I may not have clarity of mind right now. But
That's a
I
good point.
wonder if Marcy and I and the chair and the vice chair of CPAC should have a meeting, a conversation, and if a school committee member would like to join us, and maybe come with a more firm proposal about, or I guess I'm thinking that this list is a little too big, I think, for a beginning core group. I think the core group needs to really understand and read the document and really sort of set a mission for what the committee is going to do. I don't know that it will be easy to get staff members to participate in a committee that they don't know what the scope of the work that they're going to be doing.
Right.
And I don't know that this seems like herding cats if you have this many people trying to decide what the scope of the committee is. Again, clarity of mind is not always what it could be
That's
at
a good point.
10:15 at night.
All right.
It's that core committee, if we can get just,
May I ask when your next school committee meeting is after Tuesday?
May 23rd.
Do you think that you would have the opportunity to work on that with the CPAC in the next 2 weeks so we could have some more clarity at that meeting that would allow the school committee to?
I think we could.
yeah.
All right.
Just,
Go ahead.
I just know, I know there's been a lot, I know this is very important. I know there's also been a lot asked of you, Pam, and I know the message from the superintendent has been to allow focus on the critical budget items for the next 70. We were asked to kind of defer non-critical items for the next 75 days
Thanks.
to allow you to focus, right? So, and knowing this is critically important and children have been waiting, I'm just asking that we consider those two things as we set a deadline on this. I'm not saying one or the other, but we were asked, right, to focus, to allow you to focus.
Which is, I think, why, again, I think that if the four of us meet, we might be able to bring something back to the committee. And I'm thinking that we might have a more clear defined role for what a September committee would look like. And then maybe spend the rest of this year eliciting membership of what that committee might look like. So sort of have a sense of that. And I don't know, but I don't know.
How
I
would that?
interpret what Kelly's saying is that we're offering you, if you feel more comfortable, not to not ask you to do anything about this for a few more days.
And
I'd really rather not.
Yeah.
We would honor that if you're willing to do it.
Yeah.
Of course, we'll
I
bow to
appreciate
your view.
that, but I do think this is important, and I think that, one of the things, just like I said, the teachers are continuing to teach during difficult times. I think this is one of the priorities, but I think with parameters around it, right? So, I said to the principals the other day, my catchphrase is, let's give it a whirl. So I'd love to give it a whirl with the four of us and see how we do. And if it doesn't work out, then,
Then we
try
know.
something else.
All right.
Thank you for making this like one of those super critical items, right? Because that's, I know you're focused.
Well, Marcy and I talk all the time. I mean, I think one of the best things that have come out of this year is that Marcy and I have a very close relationship and are constantly, trying to find ways to blend general education and special education, looking at resources. So, I think we both would say this is forefront on our work. I mean, we do joint observations together. We go to schools together. That's important to us.
Okay. I'd be happy to attend that meeting on behalf of the school committee, if that's okay.
Sounds good to me. All right,
I was going to volunteer the same thing. I don't know if we want
well,
two
you-
people there,
We
though.
talked to school committee people, so.
I'm sorry?
I was just saying.
I
on the
think for the
list.
additional meeting,
Oh,
but
okay.
that's fine.
I don't see why you can't both do it if you can find the scheduling to work. That's still not too big a crowd. It's only
Well,
6.
I have the advantage that I don't actually have a day job. So it might be easier for Pam and Marcy to do it during the day, in which case.
I can be available.
All right, well, I don't have a problem with you both going. I mean, I assume you guys are okay with that?
Well, and I think to Alyssa's point too, because all the considerations of all those other pieces that you just started going through, is that a discussion that we will have as part of our?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, all right, so I think thank you for that.
Thank you. We really appreciate the consideration and priority, and we look forward to continuing the discussion.
All right, thank you, guys. All right, so now we're going back.
Chair, point of order.
Yes.
If I may, given the late hour, can we
Yep.
prioritize the things that need to be discussed tonight
Yes.
and chair other items for another meeting?
Right, I was about to say.
Thank you.
If no one objects, I think we can skip number 8.
Ready for it.
Oh.
That's okay?
That's fine.
All right, I think we do have to vote on the old business, and then we can probably we can probably delay a lot of the new business till next time. So what I suggest we do now is so we're skipping number 8. I suggest we do the old business, and then
Chair.
we'll make our way through number 9.
I move we
10.
accept we approve the fiscal year 25 revolving budget accounts as presented in the packet.
I second that motion.
All right, is there any discussion?
I need to understand them. Hold on.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, Dr. Mealy
These
went
are the
through these last time, yeah.
accounts that are outside our operating budget. And in many ways, help us to offset some of the operating budget because they're enterprise funds that bring in money. So our community programs and our school lunch programs are fairly self-sufficient.
And you're setting the revolving account for FY '25 based on the, I think it's based on the increments that he had already put into the budget for FY '24.
Sorry, are the highlights on the printout, the changes that we're looking at, does anyone know what the highlights indicate? It looks like it's the same. I'm just trying to see, is that?
Those are
Increases to
some of
budget lines.
I believe, those are some of the,
Went to,
are they the ones that are being pulled out for, or are those the things that we can charge back?
no, I just looked at heating and fuel, and I thought those were the ones that
But
were
I've-
pulled
Yeah,
out,
it looks
but now
like
I see other things.
Custodian,
that
yeah,
won't,
it's just some, maybe it's a not.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, it's the,
It may have been items that were adjusted.
because.
But not all of them, they weren't, yeah.
So allowable indirect costs can be charged back to these programs. The attached budgets reflect the proposed budgets for the FY 25 revolving accounts. These include increases to budget lines in the community programs, food services, and non-residential special ed accounts. These increases mirror the increases requested for fiscal year 24 and are necessary so allowable indirect costs can be charged to these programs.
Because it's got community programs, school
Yeah.
line, okay.
Because you're
costs.
not, monies that are brought in can't be used for anything other than these programs, but you are allowed some charge backs in certain categories like space and custodian and salaries.
So we can charge community programs for electricity and heating fuel, even though
'Cause
those are
they
now
use this-
covered under the.
Because they use the
town.
space, yeah.
Okay, but we can still charge, the school can still
That's
charge
the
that.
one way we can get some money back from these things. And it's one of the offsets that we carry into the operating budget every year.
Okay.
So when we thought about originally the deficit was 4.7, 4.6, and the school district was able to bring it down to 3.2. This is
Okay.
part of the monies came from here.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
It's all the same number. It looks
all the
like
same
the
numbers. Yep.
24 and 25 is, well, not all, most of them. but
Almost
not
exactly the same.
all. Yeah, there's a few the salaries that are different.
Mhm.
Who actually manages all these? Does the school department manage them?
Correct.
So our employees or our heating, and then we charge somebody for it. Okay. Isn't the main point that whoever is running them can't spend more money than they take in?
Correct.
Right, they're
And they
self-funding.
largely have they've been able to do that. They're
So
self-sufficient.
if that's the case, do we really care how much the money is? We just care that they spend
No, if anything,
what
it's
they
in,
take in, but no more.
but no more, and they can spend less.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if they spend less, sometimes that can help the rest of
We
the
even
budget.
encourage that up to a point.
And some of the money, like they do spend less in the in food services, but that extra money that is not charged back has also been used to improve the facilities and the cafeterias themselves.
I guess the point is, are we approving these numbers, or are we just approving the idea that that these programs can operate under somebody's supervision in school department management on the understanding that they can spend the money they bring in?
We are officially approving the account budgets.
Right, so that these are their, for lack of a better word, I think they're not to exceed numbers.
But if they were to raise more money, would they have to come back to us to spend it? That's the implication of what you're saying. You guys do a really good job and lots more people sign up, then you have to come back to us to spend the extra money.
Well, most of these line
No,
items
so
are
what you're,
expenses,
I
though.
believe what you're approving is you're approving the start of the revolving account for the FY25 year. We put money into their revolving account because these are generally people that need to spend money to make money. So you are putting money into their revolving account that they can spend. They will make revenue during the year. We hold that revenue, and then sometimes, so in a minute, you're going to look at FY24, where we have charged them for things which they've paid for, so therefore we have to put money back into their revolving account so they can pay their bills.
Right, but if we invest this money in and they don't make this money that we are counting on, then we're in deep trouble. Do I understand that right?
No, we're giving them the yes and no, right? But I believe you have to start a revolving account with money in it in order for them to run their program.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Jim has talked about in the past, like these have been consistently, again, food services and community programs operate on their own budget, but in years past, for instance, like it's new community programs saw a decrease in funding over COVID. I think food services, an increase in food services supplemented some of the needs of community programs, I believe, if I recall him explaining it. But community programs now is once again a self-sufficient. So it has changed over the years. They haven't always been self-sufficient, but it used to be, I mean, food services made less, community programs made more, and now there's a shift, but now they're both pretty much self-serving programs, again, my recollection of how he's explained it in the past.
You know, the one thing, though, that's troubling, though, if you look at the front cover, it looks like FY24, we had a total budget of 1.547, but we spent 1.666.
That's what I was looking at too, and it goes to FY25, but I'm trying to add up all the other different ones, like you were saying, some supported, there's a few where, like if you then go and look at school lunch, to that example you just gave, school lunch, if you look at FY25, their expenses are only expected to be 3.1, but their revenues are 3.7. So the numbers aren't added up here, but I wonder if you add up all the expense totals plus all of the revenue totals, then it equals out. Because
Is there a time frame we need to vote on this by?
This is the second week, so we need to set the revolving accounts for the next year. So my understanding is that if not, they don't have anything, so when July 1 comes, they don't have any money to do what they need to do.
Right, but we could maybe get answers to
I
some of
just
these
didn't know-
questions long before July 1.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
The
wondering.
bigger
As long as we're
problem
on
is
staff-
quite honestly FY24, which is in your new business. So in FY24, this was your second packet, we've charged these programs. And so we need to add the increases back into the revolving account so that they can pay their bills.
so for or if we,
So we need to allow this money so that we can offset the charges, so we can charge them for the things that we're supposed to charge them for. They don't hold all their money in one place. So they collect money, we have the money. It's sort of like giving an allowance. We're increasing their allowance so that we can charge them the money that we need.
So we can't do the fiscal year 24 things that we need to do unless we approve these.
I'm not as worried about FY25. I am worried about FY24.
Yeah.
so can we just focus on FY '24 and maybe leave 20, because I feel like we need to know the total numbers, but, and see, add the different pieces up before I'd want to approve FY '25, but if we have time on that one, but if you're saying we don't have time on FY '24,
We
so
don't
we
have time
power
on
through,
FY24.
let's power
Isn't it
through
over?
those.
Almost over, FY24.
It is almost over, but we need to, the budget reflects necessary increases to the budget line, so this is part of the school committee's job. I'm asking you to increase the necessary increases in the budget line in the community programs, food services, and non-residential special education accounts. These increases are necessary so allowable indirect costs like utilities, custodians, and support staff can be charged to these programs. So this is money that they have raised. We need to put it into the revolving account so that we can charge them for the things that we say we're going to charge them for, so we can put that back into the general budget.
I see.
So we need to do this now.
Well, no,
please.
but Pam, aren't you referring to new business Part B now?
I am. So what I was trying to say to you is that this one, the one that you were talking about, is not as important
As
as
the next one.
FY24.
Okay, so I would.
This one I'm comfortable saying we can wait
Oh,
on.
this whole thing.
No,
FY25, the first one you're looking at, I'm comfortable saying, but I'm telling you, you have another one to look at for FY24, and we can't wait on that one.
no. Right, so this one can wait.
Okay.
This thing,
When you were saying 24, I was looking at these columns on
Gotcha.
here, so,
Yeah.
okay.
this one can wait.
All
And
right.
I would suggest, if it pleases the committee, that we postpone this particular discussion on the FY25 revolving
Oh.
account.
So I move we accept.
Well, wait, sorry. Right now, we're doing old business, second read and vote. I'm suggesting that we table that and move on to Part 10. And in Part 10,
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
in Part 10B, we're going to talk about the same concept for 24.
One that says 23, 24.
Yep.
Yes.
So do I need to withdraw the motion, or do we just have to make a motion to table?
We'll just ignore it.
No, I think we need to.
We need to kill it.
Well, did you make a motion?
I made the motion, or seconded.
So I think we need a motion to table it then.
I move that we table the vote on F year 25 revolving accounts till
Second.
next time, or till, I'm not gonna put a date on it.
We're just tabling it for now.
Just tabling it, we can untable it.
Motion to table can't be debated, I'm voting yes.
Okay, so I vote yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, so Alyssa had to leave the room, but I think it's gonna pass anyway, so, okay, fine, we're
Can we
tabled.
move that we accept this acting superintendent's recommendation and approve the FY24 one?
Right, so we're taking it
Second.
out of order, hold on, which is fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. But we'll have it done.
Right, so FY25 school choice, now, is there a deadline on that one?
Yep.
We have to do that now.
do that tonight, too.
Okay, so why don't we keep going in order?
Well, that's just the first read, but yeah.
Oh, first read, okay, so,
It's in your packet, you have to vote on school choice. The purpose of the elementary and secondary DESE requires that each year school committees, after holding a public hearing, so you'd have a public hearing at the next school committee meeting to consider whether the district will participate in receiving, be as a receiving district for school choice for the upcoming school year. I have to report to Department of Ed, DESE by June 1st, whether or not you agree. Based on our enrollment numbers, the administration recommends that North Andover does not participate in school choice.
Is that the case now? We don't have any?
We do not participate in school choice.
And
We have
do we
for a
have very
while.
many students who choice out?
I
Guess
don't know
we
the
would have
answer.
no way to know,
I
right?
have no way to know.
We have not participated in school choice for some time.
Yeah, based on our current budget situation and our enrollment numbers,
And our building
and
capacity.
it's a very unfavorable
Yep.
decision,
Thank you.
recommendation. It's not my decision.
Okay.
But you have to have a public hearing
We have a public
next
hearing next
week,
time.
and that if anybody in the community would like to come and speak on why they think that it should be.
Okay, so we have to have a public hearing.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's when you get to open this meeting and then open the public hearing, then close the public hearing inside the meeting.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. So public meeting next time. Well,
23rd.
next full meeting, yeah, the 23rd, not
Not,
May 14th. May 23rd. Okay, got it. So that was A. Now we're on B, which is the FY24 revolving accounts, which must be decided tonight.
All right, I move to accept Pam's recommendation.
We discussed this earlier. I think we need to, do we have to suspend our?
Suspend our practice.
Our practice, whatever it might be.
Yes, I think we do, because this is
So
a
I move
first
that we
read.
suspend the rules to take into account that fiscal year, to vote, to be able to take into account a vote for fiscal year 24 revolving account budgets.
All right, I'll second that. By the way, just since Alyssa's not in the room, the notes get, no, I know that, but the notes get taken because
Michelle's doing it.
she watches the videos, right? So we don't have to wait.
No, we're good.
Okay, so I've seconded that motion. Any discussion? Okay, let's, yep.
Oh, I'm just discussing whether or not we should suspend the rules to then
oh,
actually
okay,
talk
I
about it.
got notes.
Okay.
All right, so we're suspending the policy, or not policy, we're suspending our practice to allow us to vote on the FY24 revolving accounts, not the 25, the 24. We're down at 10B, under new business, 10B.
Okay.
Okay, so vote to suspend our practice. Kelly, we're suspending our practice. Thank you. Joe?
Yes.
Ed? Yes. Alyssa?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, and we're now going to vote on a first read.
We have to
Have a motion.
repeat your motion, Ed.
You need to move it again.
Oh, I move that we approve the recommendation of the acting superintendent for the FY24 revolving accounts.
I'll second.
All right, motion made and seconded. Any discussion on that? Any
And,
further?
Ms. Lathrop, we have to do this to make sure we can pay the bills on time and make sure we are
We're-
financially sound, giving our deficit.
Right, we're increasing the budget so that we can do the allowable indirect costs. So we want to be able to charge them for utilities, custodians, and support staff. And we need to increase the revolving account so that they can pay us to do that.
Okay, and all these numbers, the new amount numbers align with the FY24 kind of budget that we've been that you've been presenting over the, I don't know, past, seems like 6 years, but past week. So these numbers are these new amounts.
These amounts
Align.
we're trying to help the FY24
Yeah,
budget.
so-
So this is money that they bring in, so that's their money, basically, that we're putting back into the revolving account so that they can give it to us to put back into the general
So
account.
the budget that we approved last year for the revolving accounts was lower. We're voting to increase the amount we set last year to these numbers, which are the same as next year's numbers.
Yeah.
So that we can charge back more money.
Yeah, so I'm
Did I
just.
say that right?
And I'm just saying,
Right.
but Michael, so these amounts, once we are able to charge back, once we're able to charge them for these amounts, that aligns to the amount of money that we need to make our FY24 budget work.
Correct.
that
Some
the
of these
last
are the
round
offsets that
presented.
we've been
I
talking
think
about.
this goes back to my
Tired.
question, what happens if they're more successful? And the answer was, we have to go approve it. That's what's happening now.
Right.
You want to go back and approve 25 now?
I'm sorry? It's okay with me, but
We can untable that, but let's finish this one.
Okay, so, motion's made and seconded. Joe?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Alyssa? Chair votes yes. Okay.
are we willing to accept Pam's request?
No, if we have more
Just-
time, I'd like more time.
For FY25, I
Yeah.
think
Oh,
we should
but-
take more
well,
time. It's
I
late.
tried, Pam.
We want to try to finish. We've already talked about C. D we have to do tonight. So what this is all about is Article 20 on the, so on Part 10D, like David. This is because we've been asked if we would like to, we've been asked for a recommendation for action at town meeting on Article 20, which is the Recplex.
Is the,
The Recplex, the recreation complex at the middle school.
oh, okay.
And it's something the town, I mean, I could go on and on about this. We've needed it badly for a long time. Unless people really need to discuss it, I would entertain a motion to.
I move that we vote favorably on Article 20.
We recommend favorable action.
We recommend favorable action on Article 20, fund recreation complex in the town warrant.
And I second that. Do you need to know more about it?
No, I think I should just abstain. I don't want to oppose it, but I don't know about it.
Yeah,
I trust your judgment.
It's
In
6 years
my
old.
ignorance,
Yeah,
I'd just
it's
rather
around-
not vote
It's
on
just to
it.
fund it. This was something that was actually approved at town meeting many years ago, but then it went into litigation. So the whole project was put on hold. So since now costs have increased, litigation costs have increased, the cost of the entire project has increased. So this is a way for the town to increase the funding that they will need to be able to fund the entire project that cost substantially less 6 years ago.
Right, and it's a very unfortunate scenario, but at least we're finally there. And the reason that they're coming to us for a recommendation is because the schools will benefit as well, right? Because if they build a completely new athletic complex over there, our high school teams will definitely be using
And
it.
some of the space is adjacent and on school property.
Right.
So just, that was part of my question is what, so we vote to, which I think it's fantastic, so I would certainly vote to, as a
Favorable
voter, I'm voting favorable, my vote is yes. So, but my question is just, as school committee members, we're voting saying that when we vote to recommend it, this is a statement question, I guess, we're voting that we believe that this is positive for our school community. That's what, when we vote here, that's what we vote for. Okay.
Precisely, that we support this because we support it because it is a definite benefit to our
To a
school
school
community in many, many ways.
Yep, I completely agree. Just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify when
Yeah.
we're voting on it here, what,
Right. That's
What's
what
our
we're
vote?
doing, is we're
Okay.
providing our support so that the citizens, when, hey, what the finance committee either recommends or doesn't, the select board recommends or doesn't, and this is a case where the school board weighs in. Okay? So, no further discussion? We've suspended our policy, our procedures. Your vote, Joe.
Oh, yes.
Kelly?
yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
And the chair emphatically votes yes. I've been waiting for this for a long time, so. All right, I think, so the rest of the items on here,
Need brain power.
yes.
I had decaf tea. If I'd known, I would have had caffeine in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're appropriate to,
I'm going to do a thing, and you can all vote no. Mr. Chair, it's not debatable. I move we adjourn.
I second.
all right, it's not debatable. What do you vote?
I'm voting yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I should say the names. Joe, Kelly, Ed,
Yes, I vote
Alyssa.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We're adjourned at, oh my God, 10:39.
With the understanding that we will come back to those.
Yes.
Sorry.
Well,
No.